Morning. Woo! So, second day, global governance gathering. I was planning to give a talk on how to level up as a DAOist, etc., but I seem to have leveled down and didn't have time to prepare the talk. It's a lot of details. So I'm just going to say hi and thank you for being here so early, because it is early. And just have a basic breathe in, breathe out. This day is somewhat simpler than yesterday and somewhat more complicated than yesterday. It's going to be a lot more people here, one. Second, it's all scheduled. So if you're one of those people who feel like this, all doing your thing and engaging and having to put your own talks there and figuring out human relationship, and if all of that is really truly exhausting for you, you can just sit down today and just watch and just coast and just be with people, and it's going to be great. Now, everybody knows the venue by now. I guess the people who were here yesterday, the people who are only here for today, talk to who was here yesterday. It was a very intense day with a lot of things happened. A lot of ideas were flying around. This room was full of tables. People were doing a bunch of stuff. I have a friend, he tries to downplay things. He makes things seem simpler than they are. He said it was a science fair for DAOs. It wasn't a science fair for DAOs, because it wasn't about shilling, it wasn't about explaining, it wasn't about show and tell. We were actually doing shit, getting shit done. I shouldn't curse. This is Amsterdam. Cursing is fine. What's the percentage of Americans in the audience? It's very low. It's great. It's just let's get the curse words out of the way. Fuck, 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 fuck. Say them like 8 times, and then Bill Murray appears. Yeah. No, I know some other ones. Okay, lekkerdings. Let's have a beautiful day. We're going to show a very embarrassing video of me explaining how the day is going to be, and I'm just going to disappear that way. I hope you guys have a good time. And remember, take care of each other. Feed each other, right? Big hearts things, you know? It's like, give your computer to Peter, because he apparently doesn't have shit. Like, he didn't bring shit. He doesn't even have hair anymore. It's terrifying. Guys, have a nice day. Thank you for being here so early. I am sorry that we start so early, but, you know, the world's not going to change itself. So let's keep going. Oh, hey, it's you again, DAOist. So we survived day 1 of the GGG. It was very unconferencey, everything was emergent, chaotic, fractal, and crazy, but now we have a more normal conference day. Way more people. Our DAO Hall of DAOs becomes a normal stage. A full day of talks packed for the Hall of DAOs. And then the White Hall, where we used to have an unconference space, is now a full day of panel discussions. If you like a heated debate, it's a place to be. And then the other 2 workshop rooms becomes workshop rooms, but this time they're scheduled, they're all prepared, and they're more defined. Whatever was amorphous, shapeless, emergent about the day 1 is now defined and composed, which hopefully will be infused from the energy of the experimentation that happened the day before. The general hours, just so you guys know, this day starts a bit earlier, starts at 8 o'clock with breakfast, registration, and swag pickup at the counter room. It's a different room, it's where the counter at the entrance. And at 9 o'clock, the DAOist team will give a more prepared opener talk, not just a crazy ritual like we did the day before. The general conference hours will run from 9 p.m. to 5 in the afternoon again, and that's our end. No after party, second day. Sorry. If you're one of those people who gets hungry, like everyone, beware, there will be food available from noon to 3. We can't run it the whole day. The space has its limitations, so make sure you get fed when the food's around. And if you're doing some activity and you need somebody to feed you, ask your friends, we will help. Okay, so White Hall, all day panel sessions, covered that. But also a very cool thing that will be happening in the White Hall is that DXDAO will be bringing its own nail salon, and you can get your nails, don't worry, it's not permanent, but you can get your DAOs, your claws, your DAO claws, covered in DAO logos and symbols and whatever you think is cool about DAOs. I think it's very cool activation, very, very fun funny way to celebrate their successes as a DAO. So yeah, check the schedule online, because there you can find all the workshops, all the panels, and all the talks of day 2. I'm gonna mention some cool workshops that are gonna be running. The People Ops Guild, which is a collection of people that works with people operations in DAO, comprising people from Maker, from Gitcoin, Coordinate. They'll be running an open office hour, so you can come and have a slight mastermind on how to think people operations in DAOs with them. It will be running in the Golden Salon from 11:40 to 12:40. So 1 full hour for you to go ask your most burning questions. And then at 1:20, in also the Golden Salon, we have a full refi track that will go until the end of the day, until 5 o'clock. Refi track at the Golden Salon, and it's been specially curated by one of ours, Luke from Collectivo Labs. We care about refi. We don't want shit to go crazy. And then if everything gets too much for you, just make your way underground. That's where the chill zones and food zones will be on day 2, where all those closed or less than open workshops were happening the day before. Also, another space of reprieve that you can explore is the mezzanine, right upstairs from the Hall of DAOs. There you can find more Ethic Hub coffee, but because not one source of caffeine will do, we also have matcha provided by Radicle, and they have a cool thing that they put their logo on top of the matcha. It's cool, it's cool. You're gonna like it. Just make sure you grab a matcha. That's day 2. Day 2 is easier to explain, although there's a lot more information than day 1. You need to go online to the DAOist.co, to the GGG page, and check the schedule. It will make you happy. It was an incredible, insane amount of work.
Hello? Awesome. This now works. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? It's 9 bloody a.m. in Amsterdam. So, thanks for all the, purists who are out here, rushing to get the, fill of DAOs. I don't know, for the weekday. Right, so just a quick about me. I've been sort of working on DAOs since like 2019. Sort of also built sort of the first DApp founders community in Ethereum, and created the Metacartel DAO ecosystem, created the first investment DAO, been doing DAO stuff for a bit, and yeah, like been working in DAOs. It's all been thinking about for the last couple of years. And one partner at 1KX, but where we sort of like purely focus on mainly 2 areas: token design and ecosystem building, right? So building communities, building contributor communities, thinking about how to build open source ecosystems, scalable governance structures, and the coordination of token launches. And today I'm going to be really talking about a new mental model for thinking about structuring DAOs and thinking about how to go to market with DAOs. And yeah, I guess the title is Supply and Demand DAOs. Effectively, you can think of most token networks as just marketplaces, right? You can there's a product, service, economy, or platform, but usually there's 2 sides or multi-sided marketplaces, or at least dynamics at play, right? So a very simple one example would be, let's say, a lending market like Compound or Aave. There's supply and demand in terms of supply and liquidity, and there's borrowers, right? And with most token networks, you can sort of further break it down into, I guess, its operational focuses, which there's resource allocation, which is really the governance of token holders, right? The token holders are governing, how treasury is spent, which includes, not only I guess how, I guess reserves and funding is used to fund contributors, but how, the token supply is used, what incentive programs are launched, and so on. And most DAOs, are really just focused on resource allocating as a means of generating supply side or demand side, generation or activities. The problem today is that most, like most DAOs really I guess, are structured in a monolithic fashion where resource allocation, supply side, and demand side generation all coupled under one sort of like umbrella of an organization, right? It's done under one organization where like maybe it's split via working groups, but it's effectively one organization with 3 different focuses, right? And yeah, you can sort of think of supply side. It depends on what the product network or platform is, but really supply side it can often look like product development, grant programs, R&D, and then really demand side generation might be like user token boards when using the product, right? So nowadays a single DAO is really just trying to bootstrap all this all under one organization. And the problem with this is that sort of the broader an organization's scope is, the more coordination costs it takes to really just sort of remain focused and to balance priorities. And sort of the more organizations occupied with coordination overhead, the less time and energy they have to really build, experiment, innovate. This is, we see like, this is what we call like, and it devolves into like kumbaya DAOs. Right, like where DAOs basically do nothing but talk about process, governance, sing songs, hold hands, and create swag, hold AMAs, and sort of do nothing else, right? It's sort of spurn all the runway and like throw parties. It's just crypto, like woo, crypto DAOs, yay, like. So it's not a good outcome. So I guess that just putting that aside, I think like we have to think of DAOs and organizations in a more modular fashion. So I sort of bring up this idea concept such as known as microservices. It's mostly a computer science term, like really coined in 2004, which describes, instead of like building computer systems architecture in this monolithic fashion, you develop it as a system of like, microservices, as a collection of services as opposed to one single service, right? And these microservices are orientated around single function, they're modular and can be run in isolation without dependencies of others. And they can be implemented using different programming languages, databases, hardware, and software environments, depending on what fits best, right? So like, none of this bullshit where like you sort of see in DAOs where they're trying to standardize everything and step on each other's toes while doing so. And you can really evolve the whole technology stack without, let's say, evolving the whole system without refactoring it. And it's sort of like, I guess it falls under the Unix philosophy of do one thing well and do one thing and do it well, effectively. So instead of like thinking of DAOs as like, monolithic organizations, we can actually think of them as like a bunch of microservices that really drive the DAO's, main focus, which is driving supply side or demand side generation, right? Again, there's sort of, you can imagine like token holders at the top governing, you can imagine token holders governing, resources from the top. They're really governing low velocity decisions. And resource allocation, smart contract upgrades, adjusting protocol parameters, and then you sort of have all these many different sub-DAOs of that main DAO, which are really just focused on a single goal, either supply side or demand side generation. And you can sort of, and I guess like the difference is that you're pushing, instead of having a single organization manage everything from a central point of failure or coordination failure, if you will, you're really just, you just really have like a set of token holders that are really curating which sub-DAOs a main DAO is funding. So it doesn't actually matter like what these subunits, how they're organized, how they operate. It just, what matters is really the output, and the output that really helps driving, the output that helps drive the main parent organization's goals. And you can almost have as many, like you don't want to rely on one single bet on supply side generation, supply or demand side generation. You want to have as many as you can. I think that's really the new like product management of Web3. It's actually like, how do you manage as many concurrent bets as you can to drive the goals of the network? And so the problem is that today, like projects are launching token holders, like tokens first, right? As opposed to actually building any of this stuff that actually drives the goals of the network below. That's why you see, tokens being launched. There's a lot of hype, a lot of bullshit, to be honest, a lot of distractions, and a project just like loses all its momentum and gets nothing done. And that's partly, yes, a token itself is a distraction, but it can be a distraction, but it's more the fact that these networks never actually built like the core engines, right, of the network in the very beginning, right? They're sort of like launching a token and then sort of expecting people to self-coordinate to build like functions or these subunits that drive the goals. But in reality, they're just like they're launching a token, a community forms around it, and they're like bottling all the focuses and energy and the goals of the network, operational goals of the network under one umbrella, right? So, typical lifecycle project, MVP is built, growth is discovered, they launch a token, and after they launch a token, they start building community contributors. And community building in this sense is like an afterthought. The problem with this is that a community takes time to build. Moment you need it too late to start. Tokens don't actually solve product market fit. It only, sort of exaggerates what you have right now. It makes it harder to find. And tokens incentives alone don't actually help you form communities. They don't actually help you coordinate contributors. Communities form around missions, goals, and ideas, not product incentives. And usually incentives only typically attract mercenaries. The best contributors are attracted by intrinsic motivations, like a mission, a goal, and so on. So rather than building, launching a token first, you actually want to build these microservice units that are focused on supply side or demand side generation first. So by doing this, you can actually start building communities and aggregating the key stakeholders you have before you even have product market fit, before you even know the network design. As long as you know the stakeholders, you can start aggregating those in communities. And it allows you to really build alongside your stakeholders in a fairly intimate fashion, way more than just like tweeting at them from Twitter, right? You're building communities that people can belong to. And I'll give some examples of what these look like actually, like at the end. And the benefits are you can actually launch a token network with functioning organizations from day one. And you're actually distributing token ownership towards valuable contributors, via targeted DAOs, that are already coordinated, as opposed to just spraying tokens out in wild and expecting, functional organizations to emerge, organically, which it does not happen by itself. So, you can imagine, like, if you have a bunch of different DAOs actually driving your goals, you can actually launch from day one distributing ownership to these organizations, where these tokens act as retention for existing, operating functions, as opposed to just blindly sending them out and, like, having value leak. So working examples. So one example is like NiftyFi. So NiftyFi is a portfolio project of 1KX. It's an NFT lending platform. Effectively, you can get loans on your NFTs as collateral. You can think of supply side as borrowers of NFTs as collateral who want loans, right? And then you can think of demand side as lenders of liquidity to underwrite loans. So one of the ideas we came up with was that let's launch an entire DAO to just purely drive demand side growth. Let's create a DAO, we call it Goblin Sacks. It's like a so Goblin Sacks we created this DAO called Goblin Sacks, which is purely a DAO focused on loan underwriting strategies. DAO purely focused on providing liquidity. And effectively, like, I guess the short TLDR is like we sort of incubated and bootstrapped this thing, and now it's a DAO that's one of the top 10, I believe, liquidity providers on NiftyFi, all without token incentives. And it's sustainably doing this, earning 50 to 60% APR on the loan, on the capital it's deploying right now. The capital efficiency and deployment rates also near 100% as when pretty much max out the initial pool of capital which we raised for this. So we first internally built an NFT underwriting bot. We realized this could form into a sustainable organization and business. We wrote up the vision of the NFT underwriting DAO. We released it, attracted and curated 30 individual contributors, and raised roughly 200 ETH from the community to underwrite liquidity. So almost like a proof of concept, right? You want to start small and then sort of go from there. And then we've been operating for about 4 or 5 months, where we built a community that's really just driving and experimenting different strategies on this protocol. I mean, lending strategies on NiftyFi. And we managed to source 3 to 4 contributors that are willing to go full time now, and in the process of raising. And this is an example of a fully sustainable organization that's now built on NiftyFi as a platform, all without token incentives. And the moment when they do launch a token incentive, there'll be a retroactive airdrop that goes to this DAO, right? Just purely based on the lending volume that we've been doing, and it will act instead of just like people taking the token, selling it for fun and profit. It's now retained into like this community that will operate for the long term. Even the token incentive is a retention mechanism for these valuable actors in your network. And so you can sort of think about this mental model for many DAOs. It already exists, so SAP protocol, they created Index Corp. Actually, they mostly as a means of like creating some demand for the product that they wanted to build, which is structured products ecosystem. Covalent, the data API, query service, built Alchemist DAO, a DAO full of data scientists to purely, drive, I guess, demand side for the product, right? They wanted, more data scientists to be leveraging the product. They built this DAO to aggregate data scientists. Zesty, they're trying to build the NFT ad marketplace where the supply side is data. So, they created they're looking to create a supply side DAO, which is actually, Metaverse Builders DAO, which is looking to aggregate Metaverse builders so they can aggregate more data, right, for the Metaverse. And, B Protocol, they sort of need DeFi growth experts to come in to help them with growth. They want to create DeFi growth DAO. Nexus Mutual, they had Armor Finance that really drives demand side, for their product. And you can sort of think about all these initiatives as fully independent organizations where the core central token holders never needed to manage anything. They just funded it and they assessed it via, I guess the metrics, right? And you can imagine DAOs actually, instead of just funding things randomly, they should be tracking all its funding and attributing back to the KPIs of the organization. So I think this is really supply and demand side DAOs as a large sort of high level mental model. I sort of think this is how we push all our projects at 1KX, portfolio projects at 1KX, really to think about go-to-market and network building. And yeah, I hope you guys found it interesting. Thank you. Sure.
So once you have those products that spin off of a community, how do you know how much that product that is not self-sustainable should pay as a tax, so to speak, to maintain the community? Does that make sense?
Not really.
So you have that product that you spin out of the community, or you create first a community so that you create a demand side. So
I think this is the beauty of it. You can do both. You can both create entire organizations by themselves and then have them participate in the underlying protocol and network, right? Or you could actually spin something out. But I think the key is that they should be fully autonomous as an organization by themselves. And ideally, after the golden, balance, the perfect scenario is that you have you have organizations that are entirely self-sustainable without even needing token incentives. And your product or network or platform is so good that it doesn't need to it doesn't need any token incentives to retain them. But early stages, you definitely might need some token incentives to bootstrap the marketplace itself, right?
I can imagine when you scale this process to a number of sub-DAOs, the number of sub-DAOs grows, and the parent DAO grows also in size. I can always see that your sub-DAOs can have communication problems, for example, and also their incentives and diversion. So imagine that the sub-DAOs themselves, themselves autonomously, but down the line, as time passes and the DAO kind of gets bigger and bigger than the parent DAO, your sub-group, so to speak, might lose touch, might your incentives might diverge, their ideals.
I get you. I think that's a, it's...
I think there's an optimum point between the number of sub-DAOs to the parent DAO, and after that point, it kind of becomes again the same coordination problem that
I disagree. I think that you should have you should make the ability to become, I guess my definition of sub-DAO is that you have the tokens of the parent organization, right? And that's really, you just have some sort of a sibling relationship. It can be as undefined as you want it. But I think that you should have as many, sub-DAOs as you really, I would say, as you can sort of manage, right, and build relationships with. Sure. But I think that the key is to basically make it so that anyone can really become a sub-DAO and compete. I think competition is pretty important. Maybe this is understated in the in the deck, but I think that you should have all the sub-DAOs competing with each other to actually perform the best, and you should be allocating the resources to those, right? I think, and then
Well, some of the big DAOs, what they do is they have a lot of the subgroups, so they kind of go on the same lines that you just said. It's to incentivize competition within the DAO, that you are trying to achieve the same goal in another way. So it makes sense.
yeah. I think because without competition, you just get to this the same kumbaya DAO state today, where you have people afraid to compete, and you end up not backing the best solutions. You should be always looking to back and support the best solutions, the most efficient solutions, the best performing ones, and assess everything that you're funding based on this, right? But except, today people are afraid of hurting each other's feelings and saying mean things to each other, and then you end up with DAOs that really fail to achieve, like to perform effectively, right? So it's like, I think that these sort of social contracts really need to be baked in at the start of the organization, so that's like clear and apparent. So by the way, DAOist people, someone just stop me if I'm going too long. Yes, I have massive problems with flat hierarchies. I think they fucking suck. I think that in terms of incentives, well, in terms of like organizing a group, I think you need to have leadership and have clear hierarchies. Like that just like gets shit done. I think the difference is that you want to be able to pull power when possible, right? So I sort of have this like vision or dream or I don't know, a wet dream of like this like DAO where like 99% of the tokens are like delegated to like one dictator. They make all the decisions and then like, but the moment the dictator abuses the power, you just pull it. And then you move on to the next dictator. We'll have many different dictators, right? This is my dictator of dictatorships governance model. It's my favorite. Ran Metacart, all of it. It's great. People can attest. But in terms of like ownership, I think that just comes with like economic ownership. Like economic ownership and there's social ownership, where like someone feels like they have the ability to influence and change an organization through their own voice, right? And I think these two are important, but you sort of have them to like, you need to have parity between the two, or there's like basically perversions that arise from the like mismatch.
So like if you have a flat hierarchical structure and you're trying to make some, apart from delegation, like if you're trying to get people to accept orders from each other, how are you going to do that if everybody is supposed to have their own voice?
No, like there's social, like there's a way to create social, a fair social, forum where voices can be heard, while also, creating, I guess, non-flat, voting, like, I don't know, voting distributions or, decision-making, power distributions, right? I think there's a difference between that two. And yeah, I mean, so I would say that, small caveat, this is a perfect textbook case. There's actually a lot of reasons why you actually want to launch a token much earlier than this. Like, ideally, you have a bunch of supply-side and demand-side DAOs up and running before you launch a token, but in 90% of the cases, it's not perfect. This is like the missing secret sauce, I guess, of when to do it, right? And how and when you should. There's a bunch of scenarios where you should be actually perhaps launching the token earlier. There's examples such as competition, where if you're in the market leader position and the market is growing way quicker than you can capture supply side and demand side, you should, via a centralized product or through your supply side, through your sub-DAOs, then you should potentially look to launch a token as a means of growing faster, perhaps, growing the sub-DAOs faster, mostly because if you like leave market share open, there's going to be open space for competitors to rise, right? One classic example is SushiSwap and Uniswap. And there's a few other examples where if you have a bunch of sub-DAOs that are in your ecosystem, there's a time before they really gain political autonomy to the point where like you can't, they start diverging away from your own network. So token and act as a really great way to align the incentives of various sub-DAOs, on both sides, but also at the same time make them compete for resources, right? So to this guy's point, there's balance at times, of like what is the perfect amount of sub-DAOs you can actually hold up. But I think this changes and increases as you build up the social and coordination infrastructure, right? And as the market cap increases, the pie becomes bigger, right? Like, and more sub-DAOs can fit in.
Like, oh, it's working. Yeah. So token is a great way to incentivize and retain the community, but like, how do you identify like how much to give like token to each contribution? Because like that's the hardest part, right? Like for like Bitcoin, kind of the network is quite easy, but for the product-based DAO, like index scope or like sushi, or like how would you identify the optimal number of token to reward?
I think there's two ways this can sort of happen. So let me think. That's a good question. I guess I'll start with the practical way you'd really figure out how to do it. Take the last funding round, take that valuation, and think about like what would be a percentage of tokens or ownership that would make sense, economically to retain a community, right? If it's small community, then you probably don't need a lot, right? Because it's enough for everyone. If it's huge community, then you probably need to, shell out a lot more to retain the ownership. And I think you can really sort of use a comparison between like founders and who else gets how much, right? Like as sort of a measuring stick, so how much to give out. And I sort of think that that's sort of your budget and range, right? And you play around with these numbers till you get to a point where you can find something that works for everyone as much as possible. So I think that's the practical way how you do it. But if you're really planning this, I think there's a few different ways. I think I haven't thought too. I think like this is something where I haven't really walked through enough examples to really be able to like share too many. I guess the dynamics of the different parameters and how do you adjust them. I'm still not sure on that, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Peter is an amazing ecosystem builder, by the way. But next we have Stepan talking about DAO onboarding, something that all of us think very often about and still have many questions about, as always. So, you good?
Wait for me to put HDMI adapter.
Yeah, it should be. Share.
No. Hello, everyone. My name is Stepan. I'm from DeepSkills, founder and contributor to DeepSkills, and today I want to talk about scaling onboarding for DAOs. I want to cover a few things. First, give a bit of introduction why this is an important topic, why we want to implement good onboarding experience in decentralized organizations, and then give a few very practical hints and use cases and just share experience of how we've been doing it or how different organizations were approaching this problem. Yeah, so let's start. Why DAOs and why onboarding is such an important topic? First, to give a bit of overview, we are entering this, or we already entered this phase of re-decentralization of economy that is manifesting itself in very different forms. For example, we're seeing democratization of data because everything that can be digitized is being digitized. All data from closed siloed platforms is going into open protocols. Self-sovereign identity gives users control over their data, and then composability of data opens up much more potential ways to interact with it. We're also seeing democratization of money through crypto, $3 trillion economy of open, programmable, permissionless money, now creating your own monetary policies as accessible as it was never before. And we're also seeing democratization of work, which is very important when we're thinking about why people want to join DAOs and how many people will actually join DAOs in the next few years. So there's a few factors in play. First, we had pandemic, we had everybody switching to remote work, and that shifted mindset quite significantly. So now people are used to this way of working from home, from wherever they like to live and to work. And we're also seeing the merge between these two different ways of working. First is freelance economy or gig economy or creator economy, where people choose when to work, what projects to work on, with whom to work, and they're completely control their working experience. And on the other hand, we have full-time position and security that comes with it. And somewhere in between these three factors is what we call future of work. And that's probably DAOs are best positioned in organizational form to actually help and empower people to find this middle ground in terms of how they work. And lastly, we are seeing democratization of coordination, which is obviously internet-native organizations, or DAOs are amazing form of contributor-centered, mission-driven organizations that are programmable and open source, and they help people to coordinate around shared goals, and they're inventing new coordination mechanisms. However, we're still super, super early, and there's a lot of problems that comes with it. So Peter was talking about some of those. I want to focus on specifically contributor experience and how do you scale your organization when more people want to join. Some of these problems are that DAOs are inefficient. We have a lot of communication channels, 1,000 messages on Discord per day. It's impossible to keep up, especially if you just joined the server and you have no idea how it works. The work itself is very unstructured. DAOs are less efficient than centralized, very hierarchical organizations, and that's fine. We are still at this period in time, and we will solve it. But right now, this is really the fact. And lastly, and probably most importantly, is that it is very hard for DAOs to onboard and retain talent. DAOs are organizations where any person can join and leave at any point in time. So there's no barrier to entry or exit, really. And that means that hiring and onboarding and then offboarding should be done much more decentralized and efficient way. We cannot, like IT corporations spend $20,000, $30,000 to hire one person. For DAOs, if you have thousands of people in your organization, that wouldn't be feasible. So I will share a few practical examples of how to approach and solve these issues. And by the way, a lot of these learnings are coming from amazing partners and organizations that we worked or did some research with over the last few years. And yeah, I think some of them are here present. So thank you. So first, I want to focus on this topic of onboarding documentation. This sounds pretty easy and simple. However, you'll be surprised how not a lot of organizations, not a lot of DAOs are actually doing this and doing this in a good way. So you want to have very clear documentation for people who are joining your organization that outlines what are the roles and type of work that is being done already within the organization. Just reading that material instead of setting up one-on-one call or waiting to trying to understand what is going on by reading Discord messages for months simplifies this a lot. So you start with defining clearly roles. So let's say, for example, you have content creation part of your DAO, and that means that there should be a role of content creator. Once you have the role defined, you say, like, what are the responsibilities, what are the prerequisites for this role, and then you go into defining capabilities, which is almost like an instruction, very detailed set of tasks and skills that are required to perform at that role. So for content creator, that would be something like doing research, creating a draft of an article, then showing it to some people, collecting feedback, publishing the final version, and then promoting it on social media, or something like this. It can be, it depends on the organization, on the role. But the more detailed, the more precise you have this description, the better. Because when new person joins an organization, or even when they're thinking about joining, they can just read this documentation. We just use Gitbook for that. And that gives them very good idea of what is the nature of work, and it actually helps them to even upskill themselves, and just by reading documentation, become better at this particular type of work. Just another example from our documentation. So we have this task when you work with customer, you need to send them proposal. And then that task has very detailed description of like how often should you follow up, what should be follow-up messages, and so on. And that is not something static. That will be improved ideally every project you complete. You learn something from it, your roles and your, for every role, these algorithm, these capabilities are improving, and if you reflect them in a timely manner, that will actually grow with the organization. And let's create this way to open source knowledge sharing within the organization. So you can decentralize knowledge exchange between any number of people that work in a DAO. Next thing I want to share is project management or decentralized project management approach. I will be sharing some screenshots from the application that we built, but it's not really to shill it. This system can be implemented using any of the existing no-code tools, like, for example, Discord and Notion and Google Doc and whatever your favorite project management tool can be. But the overall idea is that if you set up every sub-DAO or every piece of work within the organization as a project, and then you split it into roles that need to be there to complete the project, you can set up the system of upskilling and again, facilitating this knowledge transfer between people who are already in the DAO and people who are just joining, new contributors who are just being onboarded. And how it works, the main distinction here is that when new person is joining the org, they are not just applying to work on a project, they are applying to work on, to fulfill specific role and work with an existing expert, somebody who's been in a DAO for a while, so that this knowledge transfer can happen in peer-to-peer manner, and you can have even thousands of these projects running simultaneously, and you don't depend on one like core member or founder who needs to have calls with every new member who's joining and basically spend all their time on one-on-one calls with new contributors. So once a new contributor onboards, they can select tasks within the project, what they want to do, and it can be something very simple, just I want to shadow and see how it's being done, or I want to complete some actual tasks, and then depending on how much they commit to this project, their compensation would also differ. After the project is completed, both expert and the new contributor give review to each other, which is also important because this way you are starting building up reputation and verifiable representation of skills and capabilities of all DAO contributors. And once you have it, once you have those credentials, you can then enable decentralized team formation because people can look at each other's skills and capabilities and form sub-DAOs or pods or project teams depending on what skills are required at this point in time. Yeah. And then the last part I want to talk about is decentralized reputation. So this is still quite early, although I think this is very hot and very important infrastructural piece for DAOs. And I'm sure it will be a norm and it will be very widely used once these systems are developed. The need for decentralized reputation is really, with decentralized reputation, we really just want to reduce the cost of establishing trust between people and organizations. In Web 2 world, this is done through HR practices. You have some kind of self-reported data, something like resume or LinkedIn profile. You give it to recruiters, and they then need to verify this information because they cannot really trust it blindly. You can write anything you want on your CV. And that process is quite expensive. As I said, it costs about $30,000 to hire an engineer at Facebook, for example. In decentralized world and Web3, we have amazing tools that can improve this process very, very significantly. And the core of this is digital identity. Digital identity is just your some form of representation, of digital presentation, maybe just your MetaMask account, your Ethereum address, and a data store that is associated with it. So we're using Ceramic Network, for example. It can be any kind of decentralized storage system. But the the important piece here is that in that data store linked to your digital identity, you have a bunch of attestation that are collected from third parties. So instead of having self-reported CV, where you write about yourself, you have this long or rich profile of data that was issued about you by DAOs that you worked with, educational organizations, other people just giving you kudos, or maybe some non-human computational agents, aka blockchains, that show your transaction history or smart contracts you interacted or deployed, or any objective data that can be validated and that does not come from yourself, that somebody else is telling about you. And once we have this system, and by the way, this system should, as we've been kind of exploring and researching this topic, we identified 5 very important principles of how decentralized identities should be built. First one should be verifiable, so every data point should have some kind of digital signature so that you can verify this data independently. And second, it should be portable. It shouldn't be locked into LinkedIn or any centralized service. You should be, as a user, you should be able to take it with you and bring it to any application. So I can go to look for a new job at DAO, or I can maybe look for investor or look for mentor or network, and I can bring the same piece of the same digital identity with me and share the same information with different applications. It should be privacy preserving. We don't want to forcefully dox people. We want to give them control over what they want to share and with whom. The system should be decentralized, meaning that it's just not owned by any single entity. And lastly, and probably most importantly, it should be composable, because already right now we see last week I had compilation. There's about 40 different decentralized reputation protocols in Web3, and that is great because all of them have some kind of specialization. Git-POAP, for example, they focus very deeply on validating skills and reputation for engineers. And Coordinate does it for small groups, project groups, and SourceCred has their own methodology. And then some of them are focusing on on-chain data, some of them are focusing on peer-to-peer interaction and soft skills. So that's great. By doing this, by combining all of that, we can build really rich profiles that automate assessment, and then onboarding becomes much easier through this objective data that you can use. And this is just an example of how we approach decentralized reputation and deep skills. What we did was just building connectors to a lot of the systems like SourceCred, Coordinate, Colony, Git-POAP, and then also some of the Web2 platforms like Discord and Twitter and GitHub, and then pulling all of that data in your decentralized identity profile that you can then reuse and share. For example, when you apply to work with a new DAO, you can share this profile, and if we enable sharing of capabilities and skills and achievements across multiple organizations, that would allow, on the one hand, it will allow users to build this verifiable portfolio, and for organizations, it will reduce the cost of understanding like who is that person, where they can be helpful, and that matchmaking process becomes much cheaper. And just lastly, I want to share an example of how it looks like. The only thing I want to highlight here is that as we were building this, one thing we realized it is quite valuable to split your identity, your professional identity, into 4 categories, which is skills, something that you know how to do, which can be content creation or programming or people management, organizations that you are affiliated with, because that gives some cultural background. If I worked for 3 years at Gitcoin, that can say something about me. projects, because those can happen outside of organizations, especially some kind of maybe organizing a conference or contributing to open source. And then people, because we are all social animals, and then social connections are super important for us to kind of have very to assess as a people and have a summary of what they do. That is it. Thanks a lot for your attention. Yeah, it's not visible, but you can go to deepskills.io. We have a bit more materials over there, some examples that we did for other organizations with documentation specifically. Yeah, thanks. Out of time?
Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Stepan. That was really cool. Next, we have Guild, Reka and Raz from Guild, talking about an exciting tool that they will tell you all about.
Thanks.
What?
What's that? Is it an Apple security thing? All these tech people.
It's for the clicker. Just. Oh, just press X.
Oh, come on.
Okay.
What's
Start your
that
presentation.
symbol?
Okay. And do this way. Start your presentation,
Okay.
please.
How could we, Reka, how could we go full screen? Like,
Green button.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
It's Apple.
But still the F.
F11, no?
Yeah, but how do you? Okay, a little.
Oh, uh-oh.
Shit. Okay, maybe I will just.
Oh, not here in the presentation? Oh, yeah, this is good.
Okay, this will be fine. All right, hello everyone. Excited to be here. This is our second talk at the DAOist. Ever.
Okay, mine's on now too. Hello, good morning. Hey. GM, yeah. I'm going to give a short intro to the flow of the talk so you can be comfortable and ease into your coffee in your morning. So what we're going to do, oh, by the way, I'm Reka from Guild XYZ. This is Rad from Guild XYZ. We're the co-founders. So the short intro to the flow of what the talk is going to be like, we're going to give a tiny bit of intro to Guild, because yesterday when I was talking to all of you at the party, I realized a lot of you have heard the name, but you don't know what we're doing, because we're way too stealth about it. So that's going to be first, and then we're going into general community security things, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to move on to Web3 CAPTCHAs and what we've built. And then I'm going to give it over to Raz, who's going to talk more about Sybil resistance and the future of identity that plays a role in security. So let's get into it. What is Guild XYZ? We're basically a permissionless membership management tool to organize and make communities portable across multiple blockchains and basically any web application with our SDK. You can imagine it as a no-code tool in the front and then a robust infrastructure in the back, which includes our multi-chain query engine that we're working on.
And the goal with the SDK is to enable a lot more integration than just what we can do, and to really like enable the flow for your community, to bring your community with yourself everywhere you go online. And we started out with access control. We thought that's like the foundational thing for communities. off-chain, but then we are getting into like off-chain voting, some contract deployment. We are working with some companies like Coinwise and Syndicate, and we will also provide analytics and rewarding mechanisms for communities at some point.
And I would continue to kind of segue into the general community security things. I would love to do a show of hands, but there's like 5 of us here, and it's also very early, so you can just wink at me, but make it count so I can see it. So first question is, who's moderating a community in any capacity? Just wink. Ah, awesome. A lot. Second question, the spicy one. Who has been personally or their community targeted for phishing attacks, scamming DMs, and everything? Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So it's a universal issue we all face. I spend 5 minutes of my mornings just reporting my DMs, which is very fun. I made a mistake once that I reported another person that I shouldn't have, but then he DM'd another person from our community, so it was fine. Yeah, so it's a universal experience. There's been a recent rise of these attacks recently. As we all know, there's been attacks through webhooks, and still the phishing attacks and the DMs that have been going on for quite a while, they have increased for some reason. And we know what happened in April 1st with the Bored API Club, so it's still not a resolved issue, even in larger communities like FWB. It's still happening. So what is unique about communities in Web3 regarding security? Well, with the Web3 agenda, we encourage and enable permissionlessness and the anonymity and anonymous culture, which I'm all here for. It's very exciting. It gives us so much more pros, but it also brings with itself security questions and issues. Like, for example, you could access anything from multiple accounts. People can impersonate you or anybody else, have multiple personas online, and get in anywhere that they maybe shouldn't have. And this level of trustlessness entails and brings with itself the need to develop systems and make systems that make our lives, ease the moderator issues. Because this trustlessness is a very heavy workload in moderation, and yeah, it has its cons. Let's just keep it at that. There are best practices right now that we all can do, like Discord native settings, quite a few upcoming bots that you can use to make your servers and your community more secure and safe. But, I don't know about you, but we're Web3 people, and it feels so blatantly obvious that there's so many proof of humanity and proof of humanhood things lying in plain sight on the blockchain that we're not utilizing for this. It seems ridiculous that we don't use that, so I would encourage us to move forward with more Web3 native CAPTCHAs and Web3 native authentication systems. They're lying there in plain sight, so we should start utilizing that. And this is kind of a segue into what we've built at Guild XYZ, like a lightweight version of Guild XYZ. So Guild gives out access and roles, right? Based on blockchain assets and soon off-chain assets as well. But we also have a free entry option, which kind of gives a guest pass to anybody who wants to enter your server. They don't have to hold specific blockchain assets or be included in allow lists. They can just own an address and prove that they are operating that address, so they can verify that it's theirs. And this baby, the new tool within the tool, is called GuildGuard. It sounds really cool. The branding is going to be fun. But basically, GuildGuard is kind of like a lightweight version of Guild, because token gating and this access control is a nice to have, but safety is it's a must have. So what GuildGuard is doing, to give an outline of it, it basically puts all non-authorized and non-authenticated actors or members in your server into this waiting room where they see an empty server. They don't see any contents or the members in your server. So they essentially cannot DM and scam your members. They also can't post any unauthorized links or phishing links or anything in these announcement channels. So basically the bots that get into your server through your Discord invite links, or if people put them in there, they get into this waiting room and they're going to be left in this deserted island and they can't access anything else there. this, oh yeah, this is what they see afterwards. So they only see this join flow, and the bots obviously cannot complete that, but users click that and they authenticate it, they own and operate a wallet, and they will get access to your server as they would usually. So this is our first step towards Web3 CAPTCHAs. It is super simple. It seems like very obvious to go in this direction. We cannot filter out malicious people, because I've also heard some scams that pretended that they're potential partners for an administrator, and they made the whole website and everything just to get there. Yeah, so just to access their Discord token and act like they're the admins and then fish everybody out of that server. There's ridiculous scams that are going on. So obviously can't filter out for those people, but you can do for most bots. And this is a very good start for that. And I'm going to give it over to Raz.
Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit about the CAPTCHAs that we use today. Because I think we can agree on that most of these are really annoying and really outdated using very outdated technology. First of all, there were the CAPTCHAs where you have to type in a specific series of characters. Then there is another version when you have to select specific images, and this is in the background being used for training machine learning. And I personally believe that that's the reason why we still use this, because these are just so useful. But then CAPTCHAs also utilizes a lot of metadata and a lot of data in the background, like fingerprinting you and collecting all the data about you on the website. And also like even keystrokes and mouse movements and a lot of additional stuff. And that can be verified in a fully automated way. So we saw a new trend emerging, the invisible CAPTCHAs, or even the non-interactive CAPTCHAs, where, for example, a CAPTCHA can become like a game where you don't realize that you are actually solving a CAPTCHA. Or it can become just like a very simple question in a form. Or you just have to move like a slide, and still the mouse movement and the keystrokes and everything in the background gets you verified. And also there is like a version where you just have to check, click on a checkbox. And also there are like more automated ways, more non-interactive ways like honeypots. For example, user inputs that are invisible for the user but visible for the bots. And if they fill it out, we can immediately tell that it's a bot. Or time-based forms that we are measuring the time that it takes to fill out a CAPTCHA. If it's too fast, then it's probably a bot, or just fingerprinting again. And recently, Google started running like risk analysis, adaptive risk analysis based on all the metadata that I mentioned, and basically your user behavior to alert administrators about suspicious traffic. Okay, but how could we do better utilizing the power of Ethereum? First of all, we realized that what Reka mentioned, there are a lot of credentials on-chain already that can signal that you are a human being. And second, I think we can all agree that Sybil resistance is one of the biggest problems that we have to solve collectively, and it actually also solves human verification. So it's actually better than human verification. It's not the other way. So if you have human verification, you can still attack like a permissionless network, for example. But
can you talk about the difference between the two? Because I was asking that this morning too. And
yeah, human verification is basically just CAPTCHA. But Sybil resistance is also make sure that you are a unique human. So not just human, but you're also unique, and you cannot fill out the same form twice. So like, for example, a KYC. A KYC is good for Sybil resistance, although it's not the favorite of the community, but it works. And human verification is basically all these methods to verify a human. And yeah, we already have a couple of solutions live, like obviously proof of humanity. There is Governor DAO utilizing bio biometric identification of unique human persons, basically. And there is also a lot of new projects utilizing KYCs on-chain or with some form of off-chain credentials to provide this data about users. Obviously not the, so these are anonymous, but they can still verify that someone is a person. It's important to mention that security is not a binary state. It's more like a lot of different layers. And for this, as Reka also mentioned, we can't like can stop bad actors to enter a community. What we can do is stop like bot raids, bots raiding the server or just entering in huge numbers. And the way it works, we want to ensure the maximum protection against bots while requiring minimum effort on the part of the users. So the only action that the user have to take is verifying the address that they have, and then basically the wallet analysis is fully automated, the token gating mechanism is fully automated, you will immediately see the internal members and the member lists will revealed to you, and also the system makes sure that it revokes access from you if it's necessary, if you sell like tokens or someone compromises your account. So this is still very experimental, but I just wanted to bring a few topics that could be like very interesting for the future of Sybil resistance. And my personal favorite one is on-chain games, like purely on-chain games, because I believe that some of these purely on-chain games can also act as a way of capture, basically. So we're very, if you shouting out, if you are building like a fully on-chain game, that just reach out to us, because I think it could be much more than just actual fun for the users. And obviously, Sybil resistance, if we achieve that, it creates the perfect foundation for fair distribution of funds or just better governance in general.
Okay, I'll conclude. And I think we did pretty well, and we have 5 more minutes, so we can maybe have a question. I know the organizers told me it's not a Q&A thing, but we have time. So the conclusion is that we have so much data lying on the blockchain that prove human activity that we can use as a security measure against bots and massive attacks from bots. We have an MVP for that. I think, well, we believe that it is a very good move in the right direction with GuildGuard. We definitely have some growing to do and more inclusion of the previously mentioned proof of humanity, KYC DAO, all these on-chain activities, also timestamps on like trading and everything could be merged into this. Also the identity factor that we talked about a little bit and collecting all these credentials and decentralized identities from the chain.
Yeah. Because essentially this is an aggregator, an identity aggregator. Yeah. First on-chain only, but then we are extending to off-chains, as Reka mentioned, for token gating too. Like it's not about assets actually, but for example, if you have a specific pattern in your Twitter handle, or you contributed to a GitHub repository, or have other achievements off-chain, we can verify those, and you can combine it with on-chain requirements and credentials.
So those two together will provide maximum security, but we started moving towards in that direction. And we'd love to hear your input as well. We haven't put our handles in there, but it's GuildXYZ on Twitter. I'm Reka.eth on Twitter. You're always changing it, but now you're leading scientist on Twitter. So yeah, reach out to us and we can talk about it. But this is very interesting that we realized. And also one more note that is, I think, very worth mentioning is that what we started out creating with Guild is like access control, token gating. That's a very nice to have, but security, like there's no point in building anything else on top of it if you don't have security, like financial technology, community, everything, security. So security is a must-have, and token gating is a nice to have. And we always talk about token gating, but security is even more important. So we really dived deep into it because we realized how essential it is. And We implemented this in our server recently because somebody realized that it's an open gate as well, and we got a bot in there, and then we started using it, and it worked pretty fine.
We recently reached such heights that bots started attacking and imitating the Guild XYZ bots. So we basically enabled the Guild Guard just recently, I think yesterday, and yeah, we are looking forward to see the results.
Yeah. So thank you for your attention. Yeah. Let me go to bed. We have time for a question. Awesome. Shoot. Okay, you were first.
That's rare.
Should I run with the mic? Okay. I was faster. There you go.
Thank you. My question is essentially how, if you're implementing Guild Guard, especially on a Discord server, do you have any plans in mind on how you can balance that, especially with onboarding, especially people who won't be familiar with Ethereum to begin with? How can they peek into your server and see what's happening if they don't even have an Ethereum address yet?
That's kind of the point.
That's a good question, yeah.
We're still figuring that out. So this is very limited to people who are crypto familiar and at least have a wallet. So token gating, you have to own assets. And for access control that way, you have to own any asset in your wallet. But with this, you have to have a wallet, which I think is a still high education and still high onboarding barrier, but it's still lower than actually purchasing something. We're figuring it out how to make it more inclusive.
Yeah, I think the short answer is that we believe that at some point everyone will have an Ethereum wallet, but if not, we will create it for them with the best possible user experience. So it's on the roadmap.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do it. One more.
Hi there, Johan, Delft University of Technology. So we've been working on the Sybil attack for something like 20 or 30 years. So it's interesting that this community is also discovering. My students have a service where you rent humans to bypass all this type of security. So for just a fraction of a Bitcoin, you can have 1,000 or 10,000 CAPTCHA solutions. And so what the counterattack to your system is just you just rent some humans to solve the CAPTCHAs. Do you have this on your roadmap, perhaps?
Yeah, actually, we have something for that, and it's called token gating, and it makes a lot of attacks just financially inviable to attack like a system where the entry point, the entry requirement is like so high in terms of financials. So for more exclusive communities, I think it's already solved. For less exclusive communities where the entry requirement is low, the barrier is low, it still hasn't been solved, obviously. But token gating, I think, is a very exciting way to combine with these CAPTCHAs, and it adds an additional security layer.
So it would cost like $3,000 right now to get into FWB just to like smack a bot in there. So it's pretty expensive. Also, from the other side of all these proof of humanhood things that we talked about, if you combine that and have as a requirement to have...
Sorry, Reka. I think an even better example is talking about membership and access pass NFTs, because these are very illiquid. So the attacker can't even buy them up and just distribute it amongst the people they hired, because they can get access to that amount of NFTs, these membership NFTs, for example. And I see see a lot of people and a lot of projects using and utilizing these access pass NFTs more and more.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys so much. Next, we have Kristin Chen from Top GG. And let me make sure you're good.
Thank you. Hey everyone, we'll get started in a few moments. Feel free, there are lots of chairs and I don't bite. Feel free to grab a seat if you just walked in. Oh wait, do I have to, oh, okay. All right, thanks. Oh, okay. I might need help tossing this. Oh. Oh, okay, and then you guys will handle it. Okay, cool. All right.
There's 5 minutes left.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then are they going to show this? Okay, I'll just hang out. Okay, thank you.
I think, yeah, you can just...
Oh, okay. Is there a way to like... Oh, yeah. Sorry, we'll get started in a few moments.
We need to start it.
All right, thank you. Hey everyone, welcome to the second day of the DAOist. Super excited to be here and share a little bit about TopGG, Discord DAOs, and best practices. So thank you so much for joining us. If we haven't met already, I'm Kristin. I'm flew in from San Francisco on Sunday, and I'm the CEO of TopGG, which I'll share a little bit about more, but it's the #1 place to find Discord bots and servers, and also most recently DAOs. And I'm also a member and contributor in a couple DAOs, but most notably Crypto Culture and Society to shout out. So shout out to anyone else here from there. All right, so we have a couple different topics today, but I wanted to start off by getting a show of hands. Who uses Discord here? Okay, so keep your hand up if you often feel confused or overwhelmed by Discord. All right, so feeling is mutual. I'm hoping to give some tips and tricks to help dissipate that feeling today, but let's get into it. So if you haven't used TopGG before, it is most well known as the discovery layer for Discord, #1 place to find Discord bots, servers, etc. And we recently launched DAO Discovery. We're working on building, becoming a hub for community building and discovery. And just a quick overview, you've probably used us if you've been looking for a different Discord bot or server, but a lot of developers and also creators and DAOs will often come to TopGG to list their projects and get growth. And so questions I get a lot from community managers or DAOs are, what's the best moderation bot? What's the best calendar bot or scheduling bot? You come to TopGG, you search for the bot you want. And one thing I want to call out is every single bot on TopGG is hand curated and reviewed by a team. If you didn't know, bots can often be an abuse vector, and a malicious bot can actually destroy your server. So make sure you check them out on TopGG. You can actually see ratings, reviews, and also how many Discord server a bot is in, and sort by that as well. We recently launched DAO Discovery, as I mentioned before, and so if you want to check out top.gg/DAO, you can not only list your DAO, but also explore other DAOs, leave ratings and reviews. We just launched our MVP, and we're hoping to iterate a bit more. This is Shark DAO, and shout out to Del Piero for being one of the people who helped us test our MVP. So we have a big community of folks that are very Discord savvy and excited about communities, building, et cetera, and we really want to be a part of helping onboard the next billion users to Web3, much like I'm guessing a lot of you here in this room. And so it just takes 5 minutes to add your DAO to TopGG. We'd love to help you set it up. So I'm here. Mike in the audience, if you want to say hi, Mike, is also part of TopGG and our resident Discord bot expert. So we're very happy to help if you want to add your DAO to TopGG, or if you're building an amazing Discord bot, just like the Guild team built before as well. We also have a great resources page because we want to promote Web3 accessibility and education. So if you have some great resources that we can add, please get in touch with us. We'd love to add them here. And we're just getting started, so we want to iterate. We're indexing DAOs for now, but we also want to start indexing DAO tools, and we're looking to collaborate with a lot of different teams. Right now, we've been talking to DeepDAO to see how we can enhance this with on-chain data. We've also had some great chats with Emily from Otterspace, if you want to say hi, Emily, for DAO onboarding, and also the awesome Wonderverse team as well. So let's get into a couple Discord bot insights and trends. So you can obviously come to TopGG and search, but I wanted to just highlight a few bots that I'm often asked the most about. Utility bots are probably the most common bots on TopGG and the most popular. You can customize them to your liking. Mimu is a bot developed by our community lead. That's one of the top 40 Discord bots that helps with member engagement, leveling, custom commands, and announcements. Arcane is another big customizable one as well for leveling. Koya is a big one for RSS feeds, and of course, CaptchaBot helps with security, etc. We have a lot of moderation bots on the platform, but the two most notable ones are Dino and Probot, just because they have a lot of custom commands, and then role management. Something really important, we'll get into onboarding in a second, is to think about how you want to manage roles in your server. And so Carlbot and reaction roles are two pretty popular ones. One really exciting thing that's happening in the space is, a lot of folks are building incredible Discord bots. I met folks at ETH Denver. I'm meeting folks here today, and I think there's so much room for opportunity to develop more Web3, crypto, and DAO bots in the space. So I wanted to highlight a couple fun ones here today that you might want to add to your DAOs, or hopefully these spark a couple ideas. One of my favorite bots is the WTF bot by Protein, which is a Web3 glossary bot. So you can type in a command, get a definition, and also you can contribute definitions. They have an Airtable, and if you contribute to their glossary, you can get rewarded in the Protein token. So if your DAO is a place for a lot of new folks folks who are new to Web3, highly recommend this one. Two most popular bots to send crypto are probably TipCC and VTip that you can see here. Another favorite is music Discord bots. Those are probably one of our most highly searched categories on Discord. And if you've been in the Discord bot space, there was an unfortunate event last September where YouTube shut down a lot of the big Discord bots, so RIP, Groovy, and Rhythm. But Matthew Chen was inspired by this, and he said, wait, let's solve this with Web3, and thus BPM Music Bot was born. And this bot actually plays NFTs from Zora, SoundXYZ, and catalog work. So highly recommend adding it if you have a voice channel in your DAO or Discord server, or if you want cool intro, outro music. Pretty awesome. Another recommendation is GM Bot. This is made by Layer 3. It adds some fun gamification if you have a GM channel in your Discord. It has a little leaderboard, streaks, etc. Also have to give a shout out to Medusa Bot by the Guild team. Really incredible bot for different sorts of gating and permissions for your Discord server. You can use a combination of NFTs, tokens, or POAPs, or one or all of the above. So highly recommend that. And if you're like me and you're not a fan of high gas prices, you can also add the gas notifier bot for yourself or for your Discord and get alerted when there's kind of dips there. So these are just a few. You can go on TopGG and check out Web3 or crypto bots and see a lot more. And if there are any you know of that aren't on TopGG yet, or if you're building a Discord bot, please get in touch with me or Mike Veld in the back. We're really happy to help. All right, so we don't have a ton of time today, but we often do a lot of workshops on different sort of community best practices, 5 different pillars up here. We're going to dive into onboarding, but if you have questions about any of the other ones, please get in touch with us. We're happy to do a deep dive. DAOs are, I guess, we're just getting started with DAOs, but there's a lot of great lessons we can learn from larger Discord servers or communities. So the largest Discord servers are Axie Infinity and Genshin Impact, up to 800,000 members. Our own TopGG server has about 180,000, but there are so many lessons that we can learn as kind of your community scales. So let's dive into onboarding. I want to highlight first a couple best practices from MimuBot. They're known for having a really wonderful support community. The bot's I think it has about 10 million daily active users, 1 million servers, and their community is about 30 to 40,000 people. And so Vanessa, who's our community lead and creator of this bot, shared a few best practices here just about the importance of very clear onboarding. We recommend a self-help format, and also just having an overview where you cover the structure of the community, points of contact, and then really outline where different activities occur. Another important thing about Mimu is having very clear guidelines from expected etiquette, values, very concise and easy to digest. And this also helps users understand if they're violating rules or how you're going about moderation. Acknowledgement is optional, but I highly recommend it, and especially as your Discord server grows, this becomes incredibly important. And so having some sort of verification check, whether it's the guild Medusa bot, whether it's CAPTCHA, whether it's reacting or writing a message or some sort of acknowledgement, will really help filter out potential abusive behavior or raids in the future. And we often find, when a community is small or just growing, it's not a big deal when it's 30 people, but as you get to hundreds or thousands of users, or you have huge influxes of users, it's really important to kind of have these safeguards. I had the amazing opportunity to be the co-lead for community and onboarding for crypto culture and society when it started in semester 1. And so I wanted to share a little bit about how we approach the onboarding process in hopes that it perhaps sparks some ideas or there's some great key takeaways here. One thing I want to note is that we decided to make our server public initially when we launched Crypto Culture and Society, and we wanted to have a very simple and clear onboarding process because a lot of folks coming here were very new to Discord, they're very new to crypto, and we wanted to make it a really engaging but simple experience. So I know there's a lot of channels you see here, but initially when you came to our server, you would only see this values channel, and then the other channels would kind of unlock as you went through the steps. So highly recommend thinking about your values early, making them very clear, and also when you share them, make sure you put a point of contact for if a user sees something going wrong, like where do they report that? Is it a channel? Is it a person? Is it a community manager? Next step for onboarding is orientation. And for us, we decided that we wanted to just have very simple, quick FAQ, resources about the history of crypto society and culture, and then also kind of a guide for those new to Discord. Another example I want to highlight is from DAO Masters. I always share this because there's this open question of, how do you scale your DAO or onboarding processes, but also have that kind of human touch? And it's a really tough balance. DAO Masters, what I really admired was any new member that joined the Discord, Nelson would actually book a one-on-one with them and sit down, get to know them, understand how they want to contribute, et cetera. So I think this really depends on the size of your DAO, kind of the contributors you have and how you want to approach it, but really recommend just having clear orientation and onboarding. Introduction channels are super important and can be used in a lot of different ways. But one thing that was important to us at CCS was having kind of a clear format for introductions. I think sometimes people get confused and they wonder, is it okay to shill here? Is it not? What's kind of that level? And having a clear example and guide of what to do helps break down that barrier to friction. Another thing that we did, and this is more of the human touch, is that in the introduction channel, we actually leaned into having this sort of greeter role where different contributors would come in, such as myself, and as people join the server, introduce themselves, we'd actually look for other folks with similar backgrounds or common interests and tag them and respond to them so that they could make those first connections and start kind of connecting for coffee chats or one-on-ones outside of general. I think if you join a Discord server, some of the large channels can be really daunting or it can be kind of scary to reach out to someone. So if someone in the community that's known is kind of breaking down those barriers, making that connection, that's great. I'm always asked for a bot that does this. I don't know of one yet, but Discord search makes it pretty easy to do. So really recommend doing this as a practice in your DAO if you haven't done it yet. And last kind of step of our onboarding, step 3 was, I think, when people join a Discord server, sometimes you wonder, what do I do first? Do I volunteer? Do I say something? Where do I go? I don't want to say the wrong thing. And just having a really clear guide for how to get started in your DAO is really important, whether it's directing someone, to the GM channel, directing someone where to have a discussion, directing them to resources. This is, super, super important. So these are just a few small tips and tricks. We had a really great workshop yesterday with Otter Space that we hosted, and it's just so clear that DAO onboarding is a huge pain point. So really excited to discuss with everyone and brainstorm ideas together and share ideas. And another point I wanted to add is we've kind of passed the torch for crypto society and culture to the next semester. And one thing the team did was sit down and redo kind of the entire onboarding process as the DAO grows and evolves. So I want to remind everyone that onboarding is kind of this living, breathing process that you shouldn't be afraid to adjust. And it's something that will have to change as your DAO grows, as the mission might evolve. It's really important to kind of reflect and kind of rescope that. to fit your DAO. So I wanted to leave a lot of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feedback, et cetera, please, raise your hand and they'll toss you the mic.
Hi, I'll go first. So there's a lot of interest in building Discord for Web3.
Sorry?
There's a lot of interest in building a version of Discord for Web3, so Orbis and Nifty, and I know at least a couple of other groups who are trying to build a version of Discord that works on these completely decentralized platforms, even hosting and everything. I mean, probably serverless in some way, but I'm not sure. So my question is, have you looked into trying to integrate your bots into this new whatever form of Discord that will probably emerge very soon? Which doesn't use centralized servers?
Yeah, so there's a couple projects that I've kind of heard of, or a couple different projects working on a decentralized version of Web3. I would share, if you're working on that, or to other folks, like definitely think about the developer ecosystem for those. So we actually don't create these bots. We have like an amazing community of developers who launch their bots on top GG. And so I would encourage anyone working on kind of a decentralized version to think about the developer community. I think that's one way Discord grew really fast, right? They would never have the amount of resources to build all these kind of custom features. So if there are ways, or if there's any way you can make it easier for developers to kind of hook into your ecosystem or build a version of their bot for the decentralized version of Web3, I think it's a really important area to invest in. But if you are working on decentralized versions of Discord for Web3, please get in touch. I'd love to learn more. Yeah. Oh, yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm curious about, you have mentioned the balance between using bots to automate and reduce overhead, as well as having the humanity touch to make sure that people feel welcome at a personal level. How do you see might be some best practices in balancing these two, so you don't wear the team out, but at the same time people don't feel it's just another server I joined?
Yeah, I definitely think that is a challenge that is harder and harder, especially as you scale. So a couple of things. I think one, I know I didn't get to dive in, but people often ask us about like best practices for your community staff teams, right? What's the right mix of moderators, community managers, et cetera? I think it's important, one, to make sure your staff team scales with your server. I think our server is about 180,000 people. We probably have a staff team of 30 to 40 people so that we can have 24/7 coverage and make sure we have kind of that human touch, especially around trust and safety issues. I think onboarding is a place where there needs to be some form of human touch, especially with someone's first point of contact with your DAO or your server. That can be done in different ways. It could be in one-on-ones. It can be in kind of weekly or bi-weekly onboarding calls, et cetera. And I think also having events or kind of quarterly or bi-weekly AMAs, whether it's just coming out and hanging in a voice channel or having a more kind of dedicated time where people from your team or your server staff kind of get involved and have that kind of human touch or AMA with the community is really important. So I think you can think about, events at scale, smaller events, et cetera, but you need some degree of human touch, especially with Discord. Things can feel very kind of faceless or, sometimes not like you feel very disconnected. And so having a lot of different ways to make sure that people can put a face to the name or different kind of events is really important. But I think that it is this kind of constant battle, right? Because as your community grows, it's like, you can't meet with, like in Top GG, we can never meet with every single person one-on-one. It's just too many people. But how do we kind of have that scaled human touch or also tap into our community to help us, have more events or bring more of that to the table? Oh, yeah.
So, hi, thanks for the talk. I guess I saw a very interesting logo. Like we all know, like the capture bot just got hacked and got a lot of troubles. Like, is there something like Top GG could help, like to help users identify which bot is like at a better security level or like is audited? There are things like. Because when we get into a channel, there could be like thousands of bots there. We don't know which one is good, which one is bad, right? Like, is there anything could
yeah,
help?
So Top GG is a great place for that, right? Like always, like there are different bots that get hacked or have vulnerabilities, and scams are something that's very prevalent on Discord, like whether it's in Web3 scams or just other scams. So Top GG specifically, I think a couple good metrics to check are one, like what are the ratings and reviews of that bot and when were they written? And then also checking, when that bot was last updated, and also how many servers it's in is a good idea, right? Like there are some smaller, better bots with high reviews, but also typically bots that are in more servers are a bit more kind of trusted and vetted. Also on TopGG, most of the bots will have a support channel or a support server you can join to go and get more information or kind of ask questions. So if you're evaluating a couple bots, definitely check them out on TopGG. Go to the support server, talk to the developers, et cetera. I think it's really important to kind of vet them depending on what you're looking for. Yeah. Oh, yes. I think that's at time. Mike and I will be outside if you want to ask us any questions, and we have some TopGG swag, so please come and take that off of our hands so I don't have to take it back to San Francisco. Thanks again for coming, everyone.
Thank you, Kristin. That was awesome. Up next, we have Amy Jung from Komorebi Collective. Talking about one of my personal favorite topics, actually, progressive decentralization.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Okay, so I am here to introduce this concept that I've been working on since I left Maker, and it's the idea of moving from a closed organization to an open network, aka progressive decentralization 2.0. It is a lot of research, like since last year, so it's a lot of text. I'm gonna go fast. Please stop me after the talk. I'm more excited to talk to everyone individually, so don't feel like so rushed. Okay, so I'm Amy. I used to be the head of community development at MakerDAO, and a lot of the work I focused on was a transition of the dissolution of the foundation into sort of the full MakerDAO that kind of is today. And my background's in tech and design. I want to go back. I left these QR codes on the right-hand corner that references any text or kind of like readings. So feel free, if you can't scan them now, just feel free to just give me a ping. So I wanted to just start with the idea of the focus that I'm on, because when I first left Maker, I really wanted to think about a DAO playbook, and this was last year before it was like really the height of DAOs. But I realized I didn't want to create anything too prescriptive. And so I wanted to focus on something that I knew I'm familiar with, which is this transition process. Because when you're making this transition process from sort of like a centralized or a simple kind of company to a larger or to like an open network, what happens is you make decisions on those like, hey, I want to be centralized here, I don't want to be centralized here, and that starts to capture a little bit about like what makes DAOs unique, what kind of decisions are you making there. And so I just focus specifically on this transition piece, as well as I start to think about DAOs in this context of like an open network or an internet native organization, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then ultimately, I like to build. I just want something super practical that is easy for people to use and pick up, and so this is more builders by builders. It is, again, a lot of information that I'm about to share to you. I didn't have time to edit it, so feel free to like stop me and we'll have a conversation after. So this research, which I also want to appreciate Smart Contract Research Forum for funding a lot of some of this grant as well. It comes in 3 pieces. As I said, it's a lot, so I'm going to cut down quite significantly, but it talks a little bit about the first part, which I believe when you're kind of thinking about building in this space, you have to think about the paradigm of what you're trying to do in a kind of a different mindset than you would in, quote, Web 2. And then the second one's going to be around what's decentralization and my views on how you should think about decentralization and what I call multi-party ownership. This could also be community ownership. And then last one's going to be like literally step by step what happens in this progressive decentralization. And so this is something that I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with when we start to think about industrial revolution and how that was focused so much on streamlining things. A lot of it is about information and resource efficiency, right? So a good example I like to give is autonomous cars. You have Google, you have Amazon, everyone's building their own autonomous cars, but they're doing it in a way that's highly competitive, and that in itself, that silo, is actually what's driving the innovation in itself. When we think about what we want to do today and how crypto works and how it's grown today, it's actually more about maximizing the coordination. So because the data and information is so readily available to everybody, it's really about the coordination of organized individuals that we start to see. So Wikipedia is even a good example that's non-crypto, where you see how you create a process to kind of share and understand how to build resources. And so just a quick summary of open networks and how I think about them. There's a lot of internet native behavior. So there's a lot of kind of how information spreads like wildfire, how DAOs have been able to grow really rapidly, and this idea of autonomous execution that's pretty unique to the environment that we have today. And then this readily information allows you to have a lot of peer-to-peer self-organization and how you can regulate through these peer-to-peer systems. And then the last one I'll talk a little bit more about is multi-party ownership. So this is, when I was thinking about working with some teams and asking themselves, like, why are you trying to do this decentralization process? Everyone's like, I want to do it. And I've kind of summarized in a few slides some reasons that I've seen. So the first one is that value is just ultimately larger at this scale. So an example, again, is Wikipedia, where sure, one person could write an encyclopedia, but guess what? If everyone contributes and there's a process for it, you can actually get a much more valuable kind of output. And then the second one is obviously the strategies in DeFi that you see, the contributions of different teams and kind of creating these systems allow us to have value at a larger scale. And then this is one that I see most commonly, which is the famous Uniswap and Sushi. There's a lot of fear that drives a lot of the market share. So we want to. So a lot of teams want to go on the offensive or the defensive of trying to protect their mode of something that they've built. Another famous one is this exit to community. I think there's actually two reasons. I think Nathan Schneider has worked a lot on this concept, and I highly recommend learning a little bit more about it. But more importantly, I think with exit to community, we also see founders getting really burnt out, just the reality of things, and they're ready to kind of let go a lot of that ownership, as well as obviously regulatory compliance. So a lot of people are scared to get served, and so they really want to reduce dependency on the founding team. So a lot of teams have one or more of these. I don't think that it's exclusive. Maybe your legal team is worried about one more than the other, and that's okay. But at least you guys can start having a conversation about why you're decentralizing, what's the catalyst for that process, and then to have a conversation around, okay, well, what's our strategy to move forward? This is a really big one that I will talk about. Decentralization doesn't have to be binary. I think the face that I get everyone who's excited about decentralization is also a fear. So I want to say, like, there's so many ways you could make decisions and govern something in such a different level. And so you have to think about, what are you decentralizing? What piece of the stack are you decentralizing? Is it the protocol level? Is it a organizational level? There's so many different ways that you can think about it, and it gets overwhelming, I understand, but at the same time, that nuance is so important, because it's going to come out in the process that you are decentralizing. So ultimately, you really want to think about, like, why you want to do this, and then how you want to share ownership with your community or your other stakeholders, and then how that process is going to look like, really. This is a really great example I love to give around Nadia, who's like an incredible researcher, writer. She talks about, in open source, there's this idea of contributors and users. And it's really more about the ratio. So this idea that you could, a federation, for example, you have a high number of contributors or people who are helping build something, as well as a lot of users who are kind of utilizing the service or the product. And I think when we think about Ethereum at large, there's so many people building on it, and there's so many, specific kind of solutions, but at the same time, so many people are using it. And so this idea of this compared to the stadium model, which I would say a lot of like products and teams are today. A stadium is what you imagine me standing on stage trying to tell you something, a group of people where the audience is larger. And so the Geth team, for example, it's a very small group of core core developers, but then so many teams rely on this library and this kind of like client. And so the idea of a lot of teams may want to go from a stadium, which is a smaller team, to something larger like a federation. And so when you're doing this transition, you can also go from a very super small hackathon project to a stadium, to a federation. So we start to see a lot of this like movement. And so when we think about this, we think about multi-party ownership. And ultimately, why do DAOs come together? They just want to do something, right? That is just like the basic idea. They want to do something. But the way that you can build something is there's so many different models you could look at. You could look at a team that's just doing something by themselves. There's teams that have multi like orgs. So I might be a company, a incorporated company, and then there's a DAO that's running parallel. You can also just have only a DAO, which is just membership by token or any of the membership models that you might have. And then I think what's coming really popular is this idea of sub-DAOs. And so I did a little bit of research around like what happens when you have just like multi-party organizations, and MakerDAO is kind of the biggest example, I would say, of going from just like a sole team to really like a multi-party org where so many team members have different dependencies on each other, but everyone is kind of an equal builder in something. Something that I'm less familiar with, but I think is really interesting, are just like crypto native organizations. So what happens when they start crypto native first, and then the processes and tools that are used in that aspect. And then even like when teams are transitioning from a closed organization to an open organization, what happens? Like funding is a really interesting model where maybe a lot of teams have been private institutional funding in the beginning and then moving into more of a token airdrop and then a treasury, and then they're kind of growing and growing and growing. And so this is the final kind of step-by-step that I will share that I saw. If we take Jesse Walden's like very famous progressive decentralization concept, the three main pieces are product market fit, community participation, and then sufficient decentralization. But from sort of the experience I had at Maker, I actually noticed that there's a longer tailwind. There's an entire journey in this step. And so the first step of bootstrapping is this idea of the core team. I think everyone's pretty familiar with this. The main purpose of this is product market fit. And so all the teams are just iterating and working really hard to get to this stage. And so you'll see that like the initial team of anything, people are just trying to prove that there's such an important purpose to whatever they are building that everyone feels like this is the most valuable thing and need to maintain it. And a few like indicators is obviously there's sort of a closed admin system in the beginning. And then this is what I believe is the most important piece that a lot of people skip through. Peter, who spoke earlier today, he and I have really great conversations about the importance of long-term community building. And it's because when you're thinking about giving a network to somebody, you don't just say, hey, by the way, here's the keys to the car, like now you're the owner. You really have to build the ownership through time and understand how people understand responsibilities. And so this part is super important because you're looking for those people who are going to start to think about long-term and ownership. And so a lot of it right now, I think at this stage when you're starting early, there's a lot of resources in this area. But essentially, you kind of just like one-way facing, like here's information, come on in. And so you see a lot of grants programs, hackathons, translations. You're trying to get more community members involved. And I'm going to go through some examples quickly because I have a little time left. And then the third one is transition. And I think there's so much here that I see a lot of teams going through today. And the big part of transition is that you're kind of looking for long-term maintenance of the protocol or the project or any of these aspects. So you're thinking about operations of how can this exist long-term. And a lot of it is like, you really only need like 100 true fans because these are the people who are then gonna like bootstrap you to the next phase of like being a fully decentralized organization. And so a lot of it is just like, you start to see a lot of more proactive contributors, and then you're thinking about how do you support those proactive contributors. A lot of things that I would say indicators and like what you can do is like you can create community handbooks. You can a lot of things that happen in this stage is that people start to create newsletters because there's so much happening in this organization. And then you start to think about how core teams that have built in the beginning, they focus a lot on knowledge sharing. And instead of them creating something, they're thinking about how to scale their previous work into more contributors. And luckily, there's so much that has been being developed now, especially with tooling, with different incentive, liquidity incentive models. So there's a lot that's still in action. And then the last stage is autonomy, or the second to last stage is autonomy, where it's really focused on mitigating once that platform risk of like, okay, without the core team, it's still good. And so this idea of community and owned operated is really when not one single entity has asymmetric information. So it takes a whole group of people to coordinate. And I think in this space, a lot of it is just about coordination. I think I see this a lot in DAOs that have like just turned into, that have just launched a token, for example. And they're really thinking about how to coordinate best among these different owners and stakeholders. So it gets a lot more. Maker has done a lot of work on this, including like transparent reporting, delegate frameworks, and how do we actually govern like community-owned assets. And the last one, scale. I would say there's a lot that I'm excited. When I first started this research last year, there was really not too much. And now we're seeing a lot of DAO to DAO kind of interaction. So I'm excited to like revise this and refill that in. But a lot of it is just around DAOs, working with other DAOs, and how to, it's like in the new phase of improving its own system that's not set up by the founding team. So ultimately, there's a lot of kind of like pitfalls for sure. I think there's a lot of like trying to avoid decentralization theater. The big one is once you launch a token, how do you make sure you don't have just speculators and you actually have owners? And I'm working on some research about filling all the different challenges in this entire stage. So if you're really excited about this or you want to learn more, you're a project, you're a researcher, I am looking for some people to help me work on this and update essentially a lot of the work that has been started from last year. So thank you.
Hi, we have time for questions, so if you have any questions, please raise your hands and we'll pass this box along. You have a question. Catch it.
Thanks for being the brave question.
No, thank you. This is such a great presentation and research. And we are, I'm from Grow Protocol, and we are going through exactly similar thoughts around how to decentralize. One question I have is, you lay it out as 5 steps. Do you feel that those are oftentimes the pitfalls being trying to skip through some steps? And if people have already done that, have already tried to run before they can walk, how could they go back? How do they actually go back to the right steps so then they can actually build with a solid foundation?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to put Gitcoin here I did give an example of when there was the idea of Akita tokens, and before the community had ever had a chance to work together, it had to resolve this really, really, really big problem, right? And so I think the stewards did a really good job of regrouping and trying to figure out, okay, what is the best win-win situation in which everyone could win? And sometimes it is just taking that step back and saying, okay, we actually need more people who have ownership. We need people who are talking to the other team and so on. And so this framework, sure, it's 5 steps, step by step, but I've seen teams go through it super, super fast, through some of the steps, and it's okay. It's just take the step back. Just understand that these are different phases. There's so many iterations of this, That's why it's just for me I think this whole thing is about people who just want to see the big picture. And then they can say, oh, okay, we can go backwards. And I also want to do a lot more research on some of the challenges. Yeah.
I guess we're running out of time, so you can maybe catch her outside and ask more questions. Thank you, Amy, for the great talk.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Eduard Jubany Tur talking about ZKX. Very exciting topic.
All right, seems we're ready. Okay, so welcome everyone. We're here to present ZKX. It's actually our first presentation ever after a year of building in secret. So thank you very much for being here, every one of you. So let's get started. Leveling the playing field for perpetual trading. So first of all, we'd like to talk a little bit about derivatives markets in crypto. I think there's a few data points that sometimes people don't really get to see. So we'd like to go over these first for you. So how much volume did derivatives in crypto have last year? $56 trillion. Yes, that's the correct number. Sounds crazy, but that's about 50% of the overall volume in crypto overall. So that means that derivatives and spots trading are always split around 50-50%. Now, there is an interesting data point, which is perpetual swap trading grew 300% last year compared to 2020. So it's a massive area of growth within crypto. So now, within derivatives, what are we talking about, right? We're talking about perpetual swaps, futures, options. About 90% of it is still perpetual swaps. Users and traders and investors love it because they don't have to think about expiry dates, strike prices, no complexities. You just buy exposure with any leverage you want, and there you go. Now, something we discovered was that Asian exchanges still dominate the perpetual swap market and derivatives markets in crypto. So if you see like this list of the top exchanges, Binance still has over 50% of the overall market, and the rest are mostly Asia-based exchanges. There is 2 exceptions with FTX, which used to be in Asia, but not anymore. And the only decentralized exchange you can see on the list is actually DYDX, which is on the way to decentralization. Something interesting, is why are perpetual swaps useful? So perpetual swaps are commonly used to hedge your positions in spot trading, as well as create delta neutral strategies and overall compensate for the volatility of these crypto assets. And this is especially relevant in our space where with new tokens you have high volatility phases and high price swings. And perpetual swaps are key piece in the ecosystem to balance that out and provide hedges for everyone. Now, something we discovered was that with decentralized derivatives exchanges in crypto, they have had certain growth, but not a lot. And you can see that by comparing the number of pairs on a centralized exchange versus a decentralized derivatives exchange. A centralized derivatives exchange like FTX has more than 100 pairs, whereas Perpetual Protocol, for example, barely has 20 pairs. And there's a set number of reasons why is this happening, and we'll cover that now. So why these decentralized exchanges are not growing as much as we thought they would? So there are several factors. One of them, they depend highly on oracles. So if an oracle doesn't support the token price fees that you need, you will have a hard time scaling and providing secure, reliable derivatives for that token. Another aspect is, Yeah, not working at this moment. There you go. Thank you. All right. So something else that we notice is that you cannot list assets through governance. The governance is actually kind of centralized if you look most of these decentralized protocols. So it's not like a third-party protocol can go there and apply to list their token and offer some rewards or incentive for people to trade that token. Maybe a last aspect we would like to mention is there is no native instruments to bootstrap liquidity within these exchanges. They still rely on market makers. They still rely on the emission of their own native tokens. So we haven't seen any mechanism like Uniswap implemented for yield farming or liquidity mining within derivatives. So further up, I'd like you to introduce ZKX. ZKX is a StarkNet implementation for derivatives, StarkNet being Starkware ZK rollup. We're very excited to work with Starkware team. We got a lot of support from them, and we recently announced a grant from Starkware, so really happy to be building in the ecosystem. So what is ZKX? ZKX is a permissionless perpetual swaps protocol built on Starknet, designed to provide built-in liquidity mechanisms and token and swap listing through governance. Now, there's a key piece here that we'd like to discuss. As you know, virtual AMMs are not necessarily the most capital-efficient designs for derivatives. They have slippage issues as well as problems with the funding rate and the overall, distribution of fees. And we didn't want to go for a centralized order book. We thought that, we need to make something that is new and that really follows the ethos of decentralization. That's why we're building our own unique node network, which is going to have its own consensus layer, as well as a data availability mechanism, so the nodes don't have to download the entire state of the order book. And that means that, any one of us here in the room can download the node client and start performing services for the exchange and interacting with the L2 smart contracts on the ZK rollup. Now, if you ask us, okay, how do you leverage growth within a derivatives exchange? There's a key piece here, as we discussed, which is how do you list tokens faster than anyone else? And how do you let, the community hedge their positions with newly created tokens? That is something that centralized exchanges do very well, but right now decentralized exchanges don't do as much as well within the perpetual swap space. So what we introduce is what we call the swap liquidity mining, which is a mechanism through which any protocol can actually go towards the community and the DAO, propose to list a token as a swap, pass it through the governance, and offer incentives for the traders to come in and start trading that token. That means that, all of a sudden there's a native built-in mechanism for market makers, traders, and investors to go and start trading these newly listed swaps, because they're going to get token rewards in any ERC20 that your DAO or your protocol will choose to offer. So there is a certain number of fundamentals here that we wanted to create in terms of financial innovation. And we're working very deeply on these areas. And the reason for that is because, if you are listing new tokens and new assets, these are going to have higher implied volatility than just any regular swap or any regular asset. So we're creating a new kind of funding rate called adaptive balancing rate, ABR, which is going to adapt to the implied volatility of the assets and react in much faster timeframes than current implementations of funding rates, which are usually tied to 8-hour cycles, 12-hour cycles. We want to do this much faster so day traders have a better environment to trade and less, possibilities to arbitrage against the system. So we tailored this presentation towards the event today. So we wanted to talk about DAOs and how we are actually implementing a DAO within Starknet. As you know, Kaido is its own language. There's no solidity. We have to build everything from the ground up. So that is taking, a lot of effort from the engineering team. But we feel it's going to make for something quite unique and new. So what do actually, governance tokens really represent these days? Do they really represent the community, the users that are using the protocol? Are they representing the investors? Are they representing, the whales? There is a lot of questions around that, and that's what got us thinking, in terms of designing a system that actually makes and represents everyone and all the stakeholders within a set protocol. As you know, airdrops are just a limited snapshot of who's actually using that protocol at a certain given in time, and it's highly biased, so it's not necessarily the best tool for representation within a DAO or a protocol. Moreover, B-tokenomics are very interesting and obviously help lock up the supply of the token, but do they really represent the users and the traders, or they just represent the whales over time? So there's a lot of questions around that, and that's why we want to introduce liquid governance, which is basically a liquid and instant representation of all the stakeholders within a protocol at any given point in time. And the way we do this is by actually creating a system that will measure all the triggers and actions of the different stakeholders within the open source protocol and reward them with what we call virtual governance shares. So any action that a user takes will let them to accumulate more and more representation and power and rewards within the protocol. Same for the node operators, same for within the DAO, you have a mechanism to represent everyone in a more equal terms. And at any given point in time, whoever is actually the most, the person who's most involved with that open source protocol will be able to have representation as well as, the most advantages and rewards. As you can see, there's discounted trading fees, revenue sharing of the protocol, other features like higher leverage as well as more types of trading orders. All of that will be set within, this structure of how many shares or virtual shares you accumulate. So what about the token holders? Obviously, for the token holders, you still have the classic staking pool, be tokenomics once again. The longer you stake, the more virtual shares you accumulate, and the more representation you have within the protocol. But that means that, if you're someone who has a lot of, capital to deploy, you use this protocol a lot, you can directly lock your tokens and get discounted fees, get additional leverage, and get all the benefits from being, a high-level stakeholder in the protocol. So this is going to be an open source piece for the entire ecosystem. We plan to open source it and leave it, open for everyone to use within the Starknet ecosystem. So we're going to, slowly develop that into a full-fledged DAOist in Kaido, and that's one of our, future projects as well once we launch ZKX. So yeah, I think when launched, that's going to be summer 2022, hopefully. Nethermind's going to be doing the code audits, so that's our alpha leak for today. And if everything goes well, we're going to be launching over the summer. It's going to be a stage, process where we're going to launch the token first, then the governance, and then the community can select to launch the protocol. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope I didn't go too fast, but yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to answer them. Thank you.
We have time for maybe 2 questions. Gentleman there. Can catch it.
How would you mitigate bots from taking advantage of the activity-based governance shares? Like, couldn't you just write a bot that would periodically interact with the protocol and generate disproportionate governance shares?
It is a really good question. So maybe I could introduce the concept of how we're designing the liquidity mining algorithm. And that will give you an idea of what we're trying to do to limit those use cases, those particular exploitation, economic exploits. So the way we're designing the rewards algorithm is what we call the high tide process, which basically tracks your consistency of trading, your P&L, as well as how many players are trading on that particular swap. And we call it an inverted Gaussian distribution, where if you're just doing wash trading, the algorithm will not reward you at all. And will not give you both the ERC20 rewards as well as the actual virtual governance shares. So we're trying to do our best to actually implement those. And right now, a lot of the work we're doing is to select all of the triggers that are going to let you accumulate the VGS. So for a node operator, it's going to be how many trades are they settling over time, how consistent they are, how rewarded are they node peers. So there is a lot of factors that go into play. It's not a simple system. But obviously, over time, we're going to have to basically do our best to test the assumptions in terms of, how someone can go there with a bot and exploit it. We're doing our best, and we think that, by doing these kind of mechanisms, we're going to limit that activity.
We do have time for another couple questions, maybe.
No? All right. So I just want to give you 2 cents. Tomorrow we're speaking at L2 Amsterdam. Our CTO is giving a technical talk on how we're working with Cairo and Starknet. And then you can also check us out in our mixer on Saturday. So if you want to come to our mixer, just talk to us. We're around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it on? Oh yeah, now I'm on. What's up, everybody? My name is Lindsey Winder. I'm with Hedgey. We actually have a custom logo for today. We had someone in our community who drew this little thing up. He was obsessed with feet. Our logo typically does not have giant feet on it, but for today we do. Today I'm going to be talking about DeFi NFTs for DAOs, using NFTs to sell time-locked treasury tokens and reward contributors. A quick kind of background on us. So we do financial tooling for DAOs. Our core mission is about helping DAOs convert native tokens to stables and ETH and diversifying treasuries, and also rewarding contributors with native tokens in a way that's thinking about the long-term mission of the DAO and introducing kind of like new primitives to just make those better. Today, though, I want to focus on two things: time locks and token sales, and time locks and contributor rewards. Those are two things that are critical for DAOs, that all DAOs do, and that all DAOs kind of wish they had better tooling for. It's also something that NFTs, as I'm going to talk about, can play a unique role if we use them specifically for these DeFi applications. So I'm not talking about like your Bored Ape, sell it to get like some ETH in your treasury. I'm talking about the mechanics of how NFTs work and how if we actually apply them for DeFi, they can unleash this new power that can unlock a lot of potential for DAOs. So, big question, how do NFTs fit in? To get to that, we kind of have to talk about what NFTs are. We have, like our Bored Apes, our CryptoPunks, the Pixelmon, which maybe are the height of art in NFTs, in my opinion. And then we have other things like Pool Suite, VFriends, things that are like NFTs, but they're used for gated token access to communities. On the right here, hidden by the bush, you have ENS domains, which these are perhaps one of the most unique ways to use NFTs, where each NFT is unique in that it owns a unique address. I want to focus on that because I think one of the core things I want to put in everyone's head before I start is that NFTs are unique access keys. We kind of use them as this across the board, every Bored Ape can get you into the club. But in reality, every NFT has the power to be a unique access key to, in DeFi, a vault of money or some specific application that your NFT alone can interact with. So let's talk about some unique access keys. These are 3 Hedgeys. These are our art. It's maybe not the best, but for showing you what we do. These are 3 unique access keys. Over here on the left, I have key number 29. This unlocks 10 Cello on April 11th. So this is a key that I could transfer to anyone in this room. And on April 11th, 2022, you could, or this was some time ago, you could send that to our protocol and it will send you back tokens. So that unique access key has right to those unique tokens. And it's not just on our protocol. This is, OpenSea. This is my profile picture on Twitter. And this NFT has the right to 100 uni. So right now, if you go on OpenSea, you look at this, the same way we store metadata of like the traits, you can store the metadata of the financial information of these unique NFTs. That's very powerful. So how does it work? It's pretty simple. So first, the user will send tokens into our protocol. Our protocol locks those tokens while at the same time minting a unique access key, an NFT, to the recipient. In doing this, you can define how long the tokens are locked for and who the recipient is, even if it's yourself. Now, as the holder of this NFT, I can do the same thing I can do with any NFT. I can auction it. I can send it to another wallet. I can sell it. At the end of the day, whoever owns that NFT owns the right to the finance underlying it. Now, if I want to redeem this NFT, I can send it back to the protocol after the unlock period and automatically receive my tokens, burning the NFT. This was questionable if I was going to throw this in, but for more visual people in the room, this is another way to think about it. I don't know if I have any Mickey Castle of Illusion fans here, but this is Hedgey number 28. and that's a door with a smart contract with 358 house in it. At any time, I could send this Mickey into the door and get my tokens back, burning him in the meantime. So one core thing I want to put in your head is that NFTs can create new controls over how time interacts with tokens. We talk a lot about this in DAOs and finance, and NFTs, beyond just locking tokens, beyond not locking them, it creates a new possibility if we start to apply it in novel ways. What does this mean for DAOs? I'm going to give you 2 applications of how we can use this in DAOs today. The applications are actually endless, and one of the things I want to end with is working with people to try to build things on our protocol that go beyond what we can even think of. This first application is selling tokens in a public OTC offering with a time lock. Public OTC is something we've created. It's another protocol, and basically allows a DAO to say, I'm going to sell 2 million tokens, a 30% discount, and I'm going to let my community or anybody participate in this. A typical VC deal that now anybody can participate in, that we use NFTs with in a unique way. First, it starts with going on our UI or just interacting with the smart contract. You say, I'm going to sell tokens at a discount. I'm going to lock these up. Anybody can buy this. When you do that, it's broadcast publicly on the blockchain, whether it's our UI or someone else. Anybody can view this, participate it, and buy it. At that point, it communicates with the NFT protocol, minting an NFT for the buyer that goes to their wallet and that the funds go to the seller, and now you have the NFT in the wild. That means before this state, you have an NFT that you can auction, resell, transfer. You can exit your locked position. You can exit your right to lock tokens while leaving the tokens locked on the protocol. This is a powerful point because it opens up a new opportunity for DAOs to protect their interests, but also people who are in locked positions to have more liquidity there via NFTs. Application number 2, time lock contributor rewards. We all want to give everyone in our DAO contributor rewards, tokens, right? It's how you align a long-term mission with your contributors. They want upside on the success of the DAO, we give them tokens. Those tokens are liquid day 1, and it creates a dilemma to where you have to pay rent, but you also want to go long on a project, and you don't really have a choice or some kind of programmatic agreement between the DAO and the recipient. I'm going to give you an example from DAOhouse. This is a recent example, so I might as well just show you this in the wild. DAOhouse, they, if you don't know DAOhouse, which you should, they're just very transparent, forward-thinking with how DAOs organize, and they created a program to reward their contributors every month with a certain amount of house token. If those recipients agreed to lock tokens for a period of time, they would double the amount of house they got. Using Hedgey, through their UIs, through their direct smart contract interactions, they locked 50K of house this past month, distributed it to 17 of their core contributors through these Hedgeys right here. That's going to be locked for a year, and in the meantime, people are just going to tweet about it. Because one of the things about this stuff is that, finance is so cold, tokens are so cold. We pay each other, those go in a wallet, but we're visual people by nature. We like to show our tribe. We like to show who we belong to. And one of the interesting aspects of this is that through rewarding contributors with these locked positions, through doing these OTC sales with NFTs, we can not only interact with DeFi in a very serious way, but we can also benefit off the power of NFTs in that it creates this visual digital culture for our contributors in our community. I think that's a very interesting point to this. This is up. It's kind of like stealth, but if anybody wants to try this, you could go to this page, find a little hidden button somewhere, and you can do this for yourself. You could literally just lock tokens, send it to your wallet for a day, and just have an NFT that is minted with your tokens in it that you can do whatever the fuck you want with. So what comes next? We're looking for 2 things, build partners and communities. We don't want to be the end all of this. We want to build a protocol. We want people to build amazing shit on the things we do. Every time we speak with someone, we think of something new. People talk about creating bonds with these, staking, buybacks. There's a lot of applications on this simple protocol, and we want to be a part of that. So we want to collaborate with other minds, other people, other builders, and just facilitate whatever it is that you want to do and make it happen. And the other thing is communities. We want to work with people using the protocol to make this awesome and successful. So if it's something that speaks to you, whether you're a DAO trying to diversify treasury, whether you're a DAO trying to do contributor rewards, or something else we haven't thought of, we want to work with you, we want to speak with you, we just want to like jam, make it happen. This is my info, so grab it, do whatever you want with it. I'll leave that up. Lots of pictures, that's a good sign. I'll get off the stage. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's it. I left a lot of time for questions. Yeah, go for it.
What's the level of possible... Oh, what the fuck is this? Do I talk into it? Hello, hello.
That was very weird. Yeah.
I love it. All right. Okay, I'll stop pretending I have a different voice. Integrations, what's possible at the current point?
You can build on the protocol directly. It's open for anybody that wants to connect with. We're speaking with like NFT marketplaces that want to use these as a new type of like lending application. As far as the NFTs go, you can integrate them the same way you would any NFT. The metadata is there, very malleable that way. As far as building on the actual protocol, the guy right here to your right, you can make it happen.
I guess I'll be talking to you then.
Yeah.
Love it. Who's next?
Just toss it. That's awesome. It actually worked. I thought it was going to be heavy.
It is really cool. Can I do the following? Can I have my investors staked, get their rewards, be able to vote in governance, and have them give them possibility to gradually unstake over the period of 4 years?
Good question. So the two parts that can they vote with this? It is on the metadata, so yes, absolutely. You would have to build an allowance the same way that, you know, an NFT showing the metadata of the tokens that are locked. Very doable. As far as the unlocking goes, you know, we had a decision to make whether you could do a gradual vesting and unlock, or if it was like a burn, kill your NFT, kill your digital identity, get the tokens all at once. We chose the latter because we thought it was just an interesting experiment. But we did it because we saw DAOs that decided that they're going to, instead of creating one NFT, they would just create 4 NFTs that they can unlock at certain dates. So it is malleable to where you could say there's a 4-year vesting period with every, you know, 6 months, 3 months, whatever, and you could just automate those NFTs and just create a batch of them. So, doable.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good question, though, yeah.
Hi. So who holds the tokens that are being unlocked? Is it the
Protocol.
ERC-1155 contract?
It's the contract. So they're held directly in the protocol itself.
Okay.
And the NFT is minted, and the ID of the NFT is assigned to be able to collect those tokens.
So there is a way to check the balance, basically. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, these tokens could be already used in governance or some decision.
Yeah, you can absolutely, on the NFT, see how many tokens are assigned to the NFT. And one of the reasons that we burn the NFT if you claim your tokens is that you do never have an NFT that is live that shows it has a balance when it doesn't.
But there is no way to block the burning, basically. So it should be burned.
It has to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's mechanically built in that way.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Thank
it wasn't
you.
like a gimmick. It's like a mechanically, that's how it should work, you know?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Good question. Anybody else? Questions in the back? We got a question back. I could throw it if you want.
What's your fees?
No fees. There's no fees on it. We don't have a token. We're really just focused right now on like creating value for other people and building a protocol like OG style. So there's no weird shit. It's completely free and no tokenomics. Well, we have investors, so. Yeah. Anybody else? If not, I'll be here all day. Happy to chat with anybody, talk about this stuff. And thank you. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsey. Up next, we have Alan from Boba Network.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Alan Chu, founder and CEO of Boba Network. How many of you have heard of boba? Yay! How many of you like drinking boba? Yay! Excellent. Well, we all love drinking boba too. Like, who doesn't? And boba always brings a smile to people's face. And that's exactly what we want our users to feel like when they use Boba Network. So what is Boba Network? Boba Network is an Ethereum layer 2 scaling solution. We're an optimistic rollup, but we're not only that. We also offer something really unique that no one else offers, and that is Turing hybrid compute. And today, I wanted to share with you what we have built that is so special, why we think it's transformative, and what that means for a lot of DAOs. Let's dive in. So, the fundamental premise of Ethereum versus Bitcoin is that while a ledger, an immutable ledger is great, a computer is even better. And what we think is a more connected computer is even better. Now, Bitcoin is pretty simple, and that's actually part of its beauty. It's not really that programmable. Ethereum came along with a built-in Turing complete language. Awesome, right? However, Ethereum, as a decentralized computing platform, there's a price to be paid for how much you can do on-chain. And if you look at the performance of Ethereum as a computer, it hasn't really changed since its invention. And that's not really because that's not really what Ethereum was designed for, right? It's designed to do pretty simple, basic computations, but making sure that they're done right across many, many different nodes that are uncoordinated in a decentralized system. But it is a huge drawback for developers because you can only do integer-only operations, and you can't do anything fancy like machine learning, data science, forget it. It's just too expensive or too slow. All right. So getting many computers to agree on the same thing is really, really hard, and that's why there's only so little you can do on Ethereum. And now, over the years, there have been several attempts at solving this problem, such as TrueBit, which is trying to, we think it's a super ambitious project. That's why it's taken them so long to launch. Chainlink has their approach. There's also verifiable computation. But you see, as a layer 2, we actually are in a very unique position to solve this problem because all layer 2s today run on a single sequencer. So there's only one block producer, right? Very different than a layer 1, where you need to ensure thousands of nodes agree on your computation results. So as a unitary sequencer, we are actually freed from a lot of the constraints that hold back computation on layer 1. So we thought, well, this gives us an opportunity. Right? It gives us an opportunity to really break down these barriers and remove these handcuffs that have been holding back developers from building really interesting decentralized applications. So what if we could enable smart contracts to talk to the outside world, to call any external APIs they trust, and have the results come back within the same transaction? And that's what we set out to build. We implemented Turing hybrid compute directly in Geth, in Go Ethereum. So on the Boba network, there's a modified version of Geth that we run. It is still fully EVM equivalent. So any smart contracts that you have deployed on Ethereum, you can just deploy that on Boba. It will just work. But on top of that, you can extend your smart contracts by taking advantage of Boba's Turing hybrid compute capability. You can use it to create a random number that comes back atomically in the same block, which is really great if you're trying to create an NFT series using a random number to randomize the attributes. You can also use it to pull down quotes from a trusted data source. You can use Turing to call a Twitter API, for example. So this is where actually it gets interesting for some DAOs that want to reward their members based on off-chain actions. Right? You can call an off-chain API to verify that they have taken certain actions. Let's say retweeted something, or they have bought something elsewhere. Whatever API that you trust. It could be an existing Web2 property, social media, or it could be your own. And then automatically release rewards based on having verified these off-chain actions. Right? So you can start imagining the possibilities of how you can automatically reward your DAO members based on what they do off-chain. Now, going into the technology a little bit, right, how does it work? So at a high level, our Geth would intercept certain calls that are Turing calls, right? These transactions that call off-chain APIs. And we will, the Geth would call the off-chain API on behalf of the smart contract. And when the results come back, they go into the call data. So the original call data is modified to include the results that come back from the off-chain transaction. And then both the original transaction and the modified call data are written into Ethereum. And that's important because it means the verifier can actually independently verify that the transaction was processed correctly, including the results that came back from the API call. All right, so this is a diagram that explains how it works. Right, so our Geth will figure out, all right, is there an RPC call that is involved? It's a Turing call, and it will call the endpoint that is designated in your smart contract, and then the response would come back. And our Geth would then replace the original call data with new call data that includes the off-chain results, and create a new block. And this new block will then be submitted into L1. From that point on, the verifier works just as before, same as the replica. So the net is, even though we have really taken down these barriers, we have made smart contracts way more powerful, the results that come back are still completely compatible with existing verification mechanisms for optimistic rollups. Right? It's completely transparent, non-disruptive. It's taken our engineering team close to a year to make this happen. Requires surgical changes to Geth so that whatever we've done remains EVM compatible. So these are the changes that we had to make under the hood. Not going to go into all the gory details, but suffice to say, it's a pretty intricate engineering work. Super proud of our research team, and we took Turing live on testnet during ETH Denver, and now is available on mainnet. And there are developers already building on Boba using Turing. I'll give you another example. So one of the projects that is getting ready to launch, they offer NFT-based lending. Now, when you're making loans based on NFTs, of course, you want to know, how much are these NFTs worth, right? How do you find a price? I mean, if it's base C, it's pretty easy. There's a lot of liquidity. But if it's something that's more obscure, it becomes more challenging. So this project has actually developed a data-driven valuation model for putting a valuation on NFTs that people might want to borrow against. Now, that kind of model is too expensive to run on-chain, right? So they're going to run that model off-chain and have that on-chain NFT lending contract call that model to get a valuation back for the NFT that someone wants to borrow against, right? So that's a very practical use case for Turing, and it's something that you couldn't do otherwise. You can also use Turing to query commercial APIs or enterprise data sources, right? So we're talking to another project that has the idea of creating a DeFi protocol for trade finance in supply chain. Now, what they're interested in doing is using Turing to tap into the databases of the various entities involved in that supply chain transaction so that they could actually verify the quality of these loans. Now, again, it is something that Turing makes possible. Otherwise, I don't know how they would go about solving that problem, actually. And this is actually, this example is part of an emerging trend of DeFi protocols increasingly connecting with real-world assets with fiat-based cash flows in order to support the yield generated by the protocol. And that's where Turing will play an increasingly important role in making it easy for developers to connect their smart contracts with off-chain data sources. Now, Turing is not all-powerful. There are some caveats. For example, it's not suitable for all applications. There are some security trade-offs. There's currently no system in place yet to verify the off-chain inputs. And we also haven't implemented any privacy-preserving features yet. So the inputs that are passed to the off-chain API, currently they're in clear text. Over time, we'll make Turing more robust, but this is V1, and it works, right? It's magical. So if you're interested in learning more about Turing, check out this link, bit.ly/getturing. I see many of you taking a picture. Take your time. And it's really, really easy to use, and it's available both on rinkaby.boba.network and on our mainnet. So give it a try. And let us know if you have any questions. Fundamentally, a more connected computer is more powerful than a single computer, and access to off-chain transactions, to off-chain data, to off-chain computational resources is going to make your on-chain applications more powerful. If we take a step back, looking at the history of computing, the prevailing computing architecture has always been hybrid, if you think about it. Right? I see many of you, holding a phone, which is a computer, but not all of the computation happens on your phone, right? Some happens on device. A lot happens in the background in the cloud, right? They work in conjunction to deliver the kinds of user experience that we all expect and gotten used to today. And that's analogous to our Turing hybrid compute model. On-chain computational capacity is very limited due to the need for decentralization. And it's just like on-device compute capacities on your phone is limited. So it needs to be backed by something that is much more scalable, right, to do machine learning and a lot more complex computational algorithms. And that's where the off-chain API comes in, because it allows your on-chain workload to connect to off-chain scalable compute resources like AWS, Google Cloud. Is really similar to how the mobile computing architecture works today. So we believe this is the wave of the future. This is what it takes to realize the full potential of Web3. And our mission for Boba is to extend the benefits of crypto to everybody on the planet. And we believe that unless we get the brightest minds, the brightest developers to build on Web3, we won't get there. And in order to get these developers to build on Web3, we have to give them the tools they need to deliver the kinds of user experience that we have all come to expect. If we go to a top engineer working on any Web 2 products applications today and tell them, come over, build on Web 3, build on the blockchain, it's great. But you can't do machine learning, you can't do data science, you can't do advanced cryptography, the list goes on. If you're one of them, you'll be hard-pressed to make that jump, or at least very skeptical. So what we're doing here is meant to really open up this floodgate to welcome a lot more Web 2 developers into the Web 3 world so that there's a lot more interesting applications available for mainstream users. All right, so go check out Turing. Go to bit.ly/getturing, check out these developer docs, and yeah, open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this thing blew my mind. It's incredible. Now, I have to assume that you're doing all that within the time frame of one block?
That's correct. Within time frame of one block.
Okay. And now, the thing that I don't understand is you're doing it in Geth right now.
Yes.
Right? So if you do that, you go out and change the call data. How do you verify the block? Because only Geth knows how to do that. The other clients don't, and the other, I don't know if the other, all the nodes will be able to.
So that's a great question. That's why we can't do this in a layer 1, because in a layer 1 there are many instances of Geth running, but on a layer 2 there's only one. Right, so we don't need to worry about consensus. We don't run our own consensus protocol as a layer 2. We rely on layer 1's consensus to secure the transaction results. Right, so there's a separation of execution, which happens in layer 2, and settlement and data availability, which still happen on layer 1. Right, and it is this separation of responsibilities that makes Turing hybrid compute possible. Because there's only one instance of Geth. We don't have to worry about having to make multiple calls to the off-chain API and getting the exact same results across the board.
Okay.
Right, because imagine if you do machine learning, doing gradient descent, there are multiple right answers. So you can't do that in a decentralized system, but with just one instance of Geth, we only need to get one right answer back. Okay. And that goes into the call data.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, so that one cannot be really verified on its own.
Yeah, so there's no verification of the off-chain transaction. So the assumption there is, as a developer, you're only calling the APIs that you trust. So it's either your own code or something like the Twitter API if you're trying to verify if someone retweeted something, which only Twitter can vouch for anyways at the end of the day. But the results that come back, they do end up in the call data, which gets stored on layer 1, and the verifier would independently, when it runs its process for detecting fraud, would take that off-chain result into account to make sure that that transaction was processed correctly, given the off-chain results that came back. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Hey, first, congratulations, very cool.
Thank you.
The project. And question, so when I deploy and interact with my smart contract, so I need to call your RPC server, for instance. Because you told me you have a layer 2, right? So I send the transaction to your RPC server, and then you process the first execution, and the settlement is happening in the layer 1. So the one change I need to do as developer is to call your endpoint, to send the transaction over there and receive the listing from your endpoint. I understood correctly?
That's right, yeah. So you would deploy your smart contract on Boba, and Boba is the RPC that you work with.
Okay.
Right, and you specify which off-chain API, RPC endpoints you want to call in your contract, and our geth, the Boba modified geth, will call that endpoint on your behalf.
Great. If you don't mind later, just let, I don't know, a URL for developers or something like that will be cool.
Oh, yeah, it got blocked by the plant. Let me roll back. There, right? All right, I'll leave that URL on. Who's next?
I think.
Hey.
This is very exciting. As a Web2 developer, recently converted, I'm very excited about being able to call all my Python libraries and whatnot on chain. But it all seems rather too good to be true, in the sense that bad things happen sometimes when you're calling APIs. They either take too long to respond, or they're down for maintenance, or there was some breaking change. How does error handling work, and how would an API taking a long time to reply, how would that be reflected on chain?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there is a timeout. So slow API response. Currently, we put in a 1200 millisecond timeout. So when you design your smart contract, you want to catch that error case where the API simply times out. So we want to have a graceful fallback, some sort of default value for the results that are supposed to come back from the off-chain API but didn't.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Question here.
Yeah, sure. Question, just a quick comment. I'll be at the hackathon working on a distributed computing project which builds on Ethereum. You should just keep an eye out for it. Might be relevant to your case.
You're working on a
project at the hackathon, ETH Amsterdam, ETH Global Hackathon,
yeah.
Friday to Sunday, which sort of is similar to what you were proposing, or at least goes into the line of distributed computing and amplifying the Ethereum scalability layers using raw compute power, valid, secure compute power. So it might be interesting to you. You should keep an eye out.
Great. Well, and also try to build on Boba as well using Turing. We're part of the ETH Amsterdam Hackathon. Thank you. All right, looks like we're good. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. That was awesome. Also, a quick heads up, if you do need to eat, there's food downstairs. There's also, we're streaming downstairs as well, so you can keep up with everything that's going on. Up next, we have Nassar from Radicle. And yeah, we'll just let him take it away.
Is your screen mirrored? Is it mirrored? Go to top, then to the bar. Yeah. Now it's for that one. Yeah. Screen mirroring. Mirror display, please. This one? Yeah, that one. And now present. Can you make it full screen? That's your clicker. Green is forward, red is back, and it will be on the screen as soon as you start.
Cheers. Did you just tell everyone to go eat just before I spoke?
That did happen. We're gonna forget that happened.
I'm just joking.
They'll still be watching us.
There we go. Cool. I'm from Radicle. I think I've got a clicker. Oh, it's the green. Okay. Hi, I'm Nassar. I'm from Radicle. I'm leading the growth core unit, and also I've been contributing to the MBD guild at Developer DAO. Now, I kind of wanted to spend today talking about how, I guess what we're trying to build at Radicle is like this, closer? Is that better? Okay, good. Trying to build this like new developer economy within Web3, and I guess finally enable this idea of building together and then earning together. So like building together the way you do in open source, but I guess the difference is in Web3 is that then you have to bring together the ability to actually earn. And Amy's talk earlier kind of, I think, touched on this, so I don't feel like I need to clarify, but I try to try and constrain it somewhat to kind of bring it back from like the abstractness of DAOs to what I see as DAOs is like internet communities that are coordinating assets. But what we've seen at Radicle is that they struggle to onboard and coordinate contributors. And so Radicle's building tools to allow them to kind of coordinate, developers to coordinate in an internet native manner. And as I mentioned, I think the core is that the best dev teams and DAOs, we believe, will basically coordinate like the way they do in open source. And I think that we've got a fair bit of work to do to get there. At the moment, what we're seeing, I was speaking to a few teams yesterday, and I was actually surprised to hear that some of them are running Scrum. I won't name names, and that's kind of, it shows that we've got a little bit of work to do to kind of, to get kind of, bridge the gap. And that's kind of the work we're doing. I'm just checking if you guys are paying attention. What's happened there? Is it the Wi-Fi? Yeah, I think it's off Wi-Fi. Sorry. That's right. But yeah, I can keep going, I guess. So the kind of foundation of what we're doing is Radicle spent the last 2 years building this kind of peer-to-peer code collaboration stack. So the way GitHub built centralized collaboration software around the Open Git protocol, Radicle's been building a decentralized gossip protocol that basically gossips data between nodes for collaboration. And that's kind of the foundation of the Radicle network. And then we've built a bunch of interfaces, such as CLI, desktop, and the web client. And this is what it looks like. But it's okay. But yeah, so the idea is that we believe that to kind of build this new world, you kind of have to kind of be at the heart of where software development happens, and that's the heart of software development at the moment is, I would say, GitHub. And so by being at the core of the workflow, we think we can drive kind of this change of how developers work. There we go, almost there. That's how I get for the blah blah joke. This one, no, previous. But we're good. That's right. Cool. Yeah. So as I say. The CLI recently launched. We've got the desktop client and we've got the web client. So that's kind of in a good place, and the foundations are there. And then kind of the next step is kind of earning together. What we've started seeing emerge is dev teams either as sub-DAOs within the larger DAOs, having their own treasury, having their own multi-sig, and coordinating those funds as a development team. And I think by having that autonomy, you see very different behavior, and that's the kind of, I think that helps, things that help us move away from this like building these hierarchical systems where there's like Scrum used to kind of, I'm going to keep shitting on Scrum basically, but like used to basically try and basically manage and ensure that people are actually accountable. And so, having the ability to have a sub-DAO and coordinate a treasury is key. And maybe it's like funding comes from treasury. In other kind of smaller independent DAO cases, maybe funding comes from other grant programs or even investment. And ideally at some point also we'll see more and more these dev DAOs making user and partner revenue. And then the next step, once you've and this is I think the heart of everything we're doing really. I think if we can solve this, it's going to kind of really help us drive towards this open source culture, and it's about growing contribution. And I guess the two key parts of that is to kind of achieve this like open source culture. One is like contribution making it really easy and clear how to contribute, how to get started, and get developers up and running. And that's like, there's a phased process to that, and you kind of have to think about that journey and enable that journey. And that's the kind of flows we're building. And then on top of that, as I mentioned, kind of the difference in Web3 is that there's money involved, and that adds a bunch of different dynamics. And we're building workflows that allow sub-DAOs and DAOs to coordinate funding out to contributors and stream them and also do one-off payments as grants. So we're building that kind of, I guess the workflows for contribution, but also the kind of payment side of that. And this is actually, we did a maker workshop yesterday, and like we were talking about like the challenge of accountability, and I don't know if Dennis is here, but it was interesting because they at MakerDAO even have found this like accountability issue, and what they found is that like in a traditional organization you're accountable to like your manager, and then your manager is accountable to their boss, whereas in a DAO there's just a number of accountability challenges. There's some people are bad actors, but even the people who aren't bad actors, sometimes you just don't. Some people are well placed to like be self-accountable. Some teams are, but like as an organization to scale, you kind of have to think about the different types of characters. And I think just having that structure, did I say structure? Structure around accountability is key, and that's kind of, again, and I think the fascinating part of this, as I said, is like there's team accountability to other core contributors across the DAO, and then like community-wide accountability. And I think if we're working to really nail these things. And then finally, like pay and reward. There's like paying and rewarding the contributors, and then also, I guess, one of the things that the Radicle project was originally founded on was this idea of like making open source sustainable. And so paying out to the project dependencies is something that we want to see a lot more of, and we're working on that. And so issues, grants, streams, proactive payments and retroactive payments are all things that we're building flows into kind of Radicle to enable. And this is powered by our recent kind of funding protocol that we launched called DRIPS, that like allows you to stream, do splits, and then also do subscription NFTs. So yeah, those are the kind of key components of, I guess, the stack. I also wanted to run through, I don't know actually what time is it? Do I get extra time for the Wi-Fi thing? For the way you guys let me down deeply. But no, so, I don't know how much time I got. But anyway, so the Bankless is one of them. This is kind of a sub-DAO example that kind of illustrates. So they've got, like, there's a team in there, the marketing and content team. They also manage the website. They've got a treasury that they manage kind of as a team that's funded by the wider DAO. Contributors come together, they start forming and working on, like they decided they wanted to build a fully decentralized like stack within their team. So they wanted to use like Radicle to host their code and collaborate, and then like Fleek to like do deployment. And so that we want to enable that flow of like contributors coming together, developers coming and helping set that up, them being kind of people being able to kind of show their work and be rewarded for their contribution. And then finally, like deployment onto Fleek, like having that just being paid directly via Radicle, via the treasury that's managed by developers. And it's a very, very, I'm sure I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but like in DAOs, like it's a very different like cultural model. And it feels weird to almost have this in the developer's workflow, but I think once you're actually operating as a dev DAO, you kind of do need this as in your flow, because you don't have an accounting and finance department and all that kind of stuff. So it's like it's kind of very crucial, I'd say. And then DevNode is like a smaller sub DAO, and it's kind of there's sub DAOs, and then there's like smaller DAOs that we're seeing emerge that I'm quite excited about. It's like I kind of say that it's the closest thing I've seen to like purely internet native like company, like online. Like there's the whole things you heard about in the 90s where like people would meet online and do things together. But now I think like meeting online and actually being able to build entire like organizations is exciting. And with DevNode is kind of one I've been involved in, where like the question was asked in a Discord server in Developer DAO actually, what if we built Stack Overflow but with Web3 DAO dynamics where people are actually helpful and not mean and all of that kind of stuff. And so yeah, so the community began to form. Then we planned out the MVP. We reached out to Ceramic, Radicle, and what's it called, Polygon about grants. And then started pulling other developers in. And like that, like emergent organization, which now can coordinate assets, is now kind of building. And then, yeah, we want to be able to track and reward that contribution via Radicle. And yeah, that's kind of what we're enabling these kind of DevDAOs to do. And then, so that's kind of the product side. Can anyone tell me how long I've got? No? 10 minutes, okay, I'm good. I also lost contact yesterday, so I'm like half blind. So that's good. Anyway, so interoperable open source ecosystem. So that's kind of the product side, and we're building that to kind of enable developers and DevDAOs. But then we also, we've put a lot of work into building this peer-to-peer protocol and network, and now what on our side that allows any project that's building that wants to build on the data with the source code, the Git-based data, the issues and the patches in our network, they can read from it and write to it and trust that we're not going to kind of suddenly become rent collectors, and that's, I think, quite powerful. And same thing with drips. They can use our streaming and splits protocol and subscription NFTs. And then we're also using a bunch of the protocols and standards in Web3. And I think that this as we're very early and everyone's literally at this, I think we're at a point where everyone is just like doesn't want to hear about another DAO tool, but it's like everyone smiles because I think it's a bit much. But I think as people build valuable flows and they are interoperable, I think it's going to be a game changer. It's probably what's excited me about Web3 the most. And two examples. One is Wonder. So we've been speaking a fair bit to Wonder about how they'd be using our protocols. They're interested in enriching their contributor profiles with Radicle data on developers and how they've been contributing. They're looking at using Drips protocol for streaming out to contributors. And then we're also, I think quite interested in this idea of maybe having the shared data structures for tasks and cards that, as you manage work. Asana and GitHub integration, if anyone's ever used it, knows how terrible it is, right? And so I think we're really excited about building a deep integration there and kind of what that would enable. And then DevNode, this is kind of the Web3 kind of Stack Overflow that we're kind of starting to build out. And we're interested, the idea of a question being asked or answered and you're able to kind of immediately see the profile and reputation in terms of their contributions and who they've collaborated with on DevNode is kind of the data that DevNode would be using, and from our case, on our Radicle org pages, we can see having a tab for questions being asked, and people can ask questions, and you have this kind of interoperable data ecosystem as kind of what we're excited about. And yeah, just to end with, I kind of want to mention that Radicle's kind of built this peer-to-peer network. We've had thousands of projects kind of hosted on the Radicle network. Pretty much every top project has done so, and that kind of means that if you haven't, you're not a top project. But it's so we've got that foundation in place, and the next step now is really building out the. I'm seeing LivePair laugh. Have you guys dropped? You haven't. But yeah, what's it called? So next steps is very much building out these flows and tools to allow developers to really kind of get productive. And yeah, I guess as kind of Amy mentioned earlier, that we are also DAOing. We're kind of building out a DAO, and we're kind of progressively decentralizing quite rapidly. Abby and Shelby are and others as well are doing amazing work and transitioning us to a DAO. And the Growth Core unit is one of the first kind of sub DAOs that spun out, and it's kind of teaching us a lot on just how that works and how that's different. And there's a bunch of challenges, and there's a bunch of the amount of autonomy I have and our team has and what we're able to do. I think it is a game changer for those who are kind of early in the transition period or haven't done it yet. And yeah, that's kind of that. And then finally, thank you, and yeah, thanks for listening, I guess. Cheers. Pardon? Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
You guys have any questions? Hello? No questions?
So is the idea that this is like a drop-in replacement for GitHub and that all the same developer workflows will go over, or is the vision broader that you want to capture like non-code based workflows as well?
Yes, it's a good question. I'd say for the first thing is that like for now we're telling teams that we'd expect them to mirror, and we're focusing on like the contributor onboarding and kind of engagement workflows and payment workflows. We're not far off like having the core workflows that you'd need, and the aim is, I think, for at least the next 6 to 12 months, for people to mirror. But I think long term, yeah, we'd want to build a replacement to GitHub. Just don't tell them that. Actually, it's not. It's we want to sneak attack. But with regards to the wider thing, it's a really interesting question. I think it's one we're going to be exploring. We're very focused. There's a lot of work to do on like building this thing out for developers. I think we'll be focused on that for quite a while. But the space is moving so fast, and the contribution question and how those flows work is a massive open question for everyone right now. And I think, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, cheers.
Anyone else?
Cool. Maybe we should ask LivePay why they haven't. No, joking. Pardon? How do you set up a node? We'll speak. There you go. Cool. Yeah, I'm just messing with them. Cool.
Good.
Cheers. Is that everyone? Thanks, everyone.